This story is titled, My Parents Left Me to Bleed Out, so they could celebrate my brother's success. Now they're the ones losing everything. So I've been holding this shit in for a long time. Figured Reddit might be the place to finally get it off my chest. I'm Derek, 30 years old, and I run a small custom motorcycle repair shop. Well, I used to anyway. More on that later. Growing up in Bristol, Tennessee fucking sucked. Not because of the town, but because of my family situation. See, I have a younger brother, Tyler. He's 3 years younger than me, and in my parents' eyes, the sun basically shines out of his ass. Our house was basically the Tyler show 24/7. Our living room looked like some kind of weird baseball museum. All his trophies displayed like they were fucking Olympic medals or something. Team photos everywhere. His old jerseys hung up in frames like he was Babe Ruth or some shit. I'm not even kidding. My parents had a special cabinet built just for his baseball stuff. Meanwhile, my stuff? I was pretty good at auto shop in high school. Won a few awards for engine rebuilds. Know where those ended up? In a drawer somewhere? Or the trash? Maybe got a "that's nice" from my dad once in a blue moon. I remember spending a whole summer when I was 16 fixing up this old Kawasaki engine. Saved for months working at the gas station to buy all the parts. When I finally got it running, I was so proud I called my dad out to the garage to show him. Dude barely looked at it. Stood there for maybe 20 seconds, muttered, "That's nice, son." Then immediately asked if I'd seen Tyler's batting stats in the paper that morning. Like, are you fucking kidding me? This was basically my entire childhood. My mom would spend hours making Tyler's favorite meals before his games. Gotta make sure my all-star has his energy. But when I had a bike show, just grab something from the fridge, Derek. Dad would leave work early for every single one of Tyler's games, but was too busy at the office to come see me win second place at the regional custom bike competition. I stopped even telling them about my competitions after a while. What was the point? And holy shit, the money they spent on Tyler. Private coaches, fancy equipment, traveling teams that went all over the state. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs in high school just to afford tools and parts for my bikes. Never saw a dime from my parents for my stuff. The fucked up part is, I didn't even hate Tyler for it. He wasn't a bad kid, really. Just spoiled as hell and completely clueless about how unfair everything was. Sometimes I'd catch him looking uncomfortable when they'd shower him with praise, right after ignoring something I said. But he never spoke up. Why would he? Kid was living the dream. By the time I turned 18, I knew I had to get the fuck out of there before I lost my mind. I'd been saving every penny I could, and I managed to rent this tiny garage about 8 miles from my parents' house. Close enough that they could reach me if they ever bothered to try, but far enough that I didn't have to watch the Tyler worship service every day. I built that motorcycle repair business from absolutely nothing. No help from mom and dad, no fancy loans or family connections, just me busting my ass 16 hours a day, sleeping on a nasty old cot in the back of my shop for the first year until I could afford an actual apartment. It was hard as shit, but I was good at what I did. Word got around that I could fix and modify bikes better than the dealerships for half the price. That shop became my whole life. My dog Max would hang out with me all day, sleeping in the sun by the door while I worked. I felt like I actually mattered there, you know? Like I was worth something. And then there was this chick Mia. She moved in next door about 2 years ago and opened this cute little coffee shop. First time she walked over with a "welcome to the neighborhood" coffee, I nearly dropped the wrench I was holding. She was gorgeous, smart, funny, way out of my league. But for some reason, she seemed to actually enjoy hanging around and talking about bikes and engines with me. Not gonna lie, I got these stupid butterflies in my stomach whenever she'd stop by. But I kept it friendly and professional. Just normal neighbor stuff. After all, why would someone like her be interested in someone greasy like me? My family had made it pretty clear I wasn't worth much, so I figured she probably thought the same. Everything was going pretty okay. Business was good. I had my dog, my shop, and at least Mia seemed to enjoy talking to me now and then. I thought maybe my life was finally on the right track. Then came the day 2 years ago that opened my eyes on exactly where I stood with my family. It was a Tuesday. I was working on this sweet Ducati that some rich dude from Nashville had brought in for custom work. He wanted all these fancy mods that were honestly kind of a pain in the ass, but he was paying top dollar, so I wasn't complaining. Max was in his usual spot by the door, snoring away like the lazy bastard he is. I had AC/DC blasting from my crappy old speakers. I was using my plasma cutter to modify the frame. I'd done this exact same thing like 100 times before. Nothing complicated. But this time, man, I still don't know exactly what happened. Maybe the metal had some defect, maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. All I know is 1 second I was focused on making a clean cut, And the next, there was this horrible sound like metal tearing, a shower of sparks, and then the plasma cutter kicked back. Hard. The cutter sliced right through my right leg just above the knee. I remember seeing the metal glow red hot as it tore into my flesh, and the smell, holy fuck, the smell of my own burning flesh. I screamed so goddamn loud that Max jumped up barking like he was gonna fight whatever hurt me. Blood started pumping out immediately. Not just bleeding, but fucking gushing with each heartbeat. I fell backwards and cracked my head on the concrete floor, which didn't help matters. The pain, I can't even describe it. Like someone had stuck my leg in a furnace and was twisting it around. I've broken bones before, cut myself on engine parts, burned myself on exhaust pipes, but this was a whole different level. Fuck! Help! Somebody help me! I screamed. But my shop is pretty isolated. No way anyone was going to hear me over the music. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely reach for my phone. Blood was pooling under me fast, spreading across the shop floor like I'd knocked over a can of paint. I could feel my heart racing, and this cold, sweaty feeling spreading all over my body. With my bloody fingers smearing the screen, I finally managed to call my mom. When she picked up, I was gasping, barely able to get the words out. Mom, I choked out. I'm hurt really bad. The cutter, my leg, there's so much blood. I need help now. Her response was completely casual, like I'd called to ask what's for dinner. Derek, honey, we're kind of in the middle of something important. Can you call an ambulance? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, please, I begged, my voice cracking. I'm losing too much blood. I don't think I can. I need help right now. Please. I was starting to feel lightheaded, and the room was spinning. Just hold tight, Derek. We'll be there when we can, she said. And then the line went dead. She fucking hung up on me. I was lying there on the concrete, pressing my shop rag against the wound, but it was soaked through with blood in seconds. My vision was getting all tunnel-like, black, creeping in from the edges. I tried to call 911, but my fingers were too slippery with blood to hit the numbers right. Max was freaking out, kept barking, whining and nudging at my face, like he was trying to keep me awake. Smart boy. With what felt like the last bit of strength I had, I tried calling my mom again. No answer. Then my dad. Straight to voicemail. Figures. I tried to say my last prayer, but Max wouldn't let me die peacefully. Fuck, even the afterlife comes with interruptions. Just as I was about to die for the last time, I wish I did, my phone buzzed. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. I thought they told him about what happened to me, and he's checking to see what to do. Hey, Liam! His voice was loud and slurred, like he'd been drinking. I could hear music and people laughing in the background. What's up, man? Big day today. I was confused. Who's the hell is Liam now? I thought I didn't hear right anyways. I was a bit relieved. Tyler, I gasped, struggling to get the words out. Help. Accident at the shop. Bleeding bad. Need help now. There was a pause. For a second, I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. But then he laughed. Oh, crap, sorry. Thought you were someone else calling to congratulate me. We're celebrating my draft pick, man. AA Braves just signed me. $2 million contract. In the background, I heard my mom's voice. Tyler, honey, come take a picture with the scout. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. My head was spinning. I could feel the blood seeping faster under me. Tyler, I whispered, but the line had already gone dead. My dad's voice boomed in the background. That's my boy, professional baseball player. Always knew you had it in you. So there I was, bleeding out on my shop floor, while my entire family was just 8 miles away partying because Tyler got a baseball contract. They couldn't be bothered to drive 10 minutes to help me. Tyler, please, I whispered, but he had already hung up. My vision was fading fast now. The pain was starting to feel distant, replaced by this weird floating numbness. Not a good sign. I knew enough about injuries to know I was going into shock. Probably dying, this time for real. Max's barking suddenly changed, becoming more frantic. Through my fading consciousness, I heard the shop door slam open. Derek, I brought you some coffee and... Oh my God! Derek! Mia's voice. Then her face appeared above me, total horror in her eyes. I didn't like her seeing me like this. I always portrayed myself as a tough, strong dude in front of her. Derek, stay with me! Don't close your eyes! She was already on her phone, screaming at 911. I need an ambulance now! Severe laceration, arterial bleeding, patient losing consciousness. She ripped off her belt and wrapped it around my thigh, yanking it tight as a tourniquet. The pain jolted me back to consciousness for a moment. Mia, I mumbled. Don't talk. Save your strength. Her hands were covered in my blood. but she didn't hesitate for a second. The ambulance is coming. Just stay with me, Derek. Please stay with me. I wanted to tell her I didn't need an ambulance. I was already saved, right there in her arms. If this was how I went out, at least I had the best view. The last thing I remember before passing out was her eyes, filled with tears, and her voice repeating my name over and over. I later found out that Max had been barking nonstop for so long that Mia came to check what was wrong. If she hadn't shown up when she did, I wouldn't be typing this right now. The doctor told me I was about 5 minutes away from bleeding out completely. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors and that weird antiseptic smell hospitals always have. My leg felt like it was on fire, but at least I was alive. Mia was asleep in the chair next to my bed, her clothes still stained with my blood. Looking at her there, even with her hair all messed up and dark circles under her eyes, I realized how lucky I was that she found me. The doctor came in a few hours later, looking all serious with his clipboard and everything. You're lucky to be alive. If your neighbor hadn't found you when she did, you would have bled out in another 5 minutes. He cleared his throat and got that look doctors get when they're about to drop some bad news. The bad news is, the damage to your leg was extensive. The plasma cutter severed your femoral artery and caused significant nerve and muscle damage. We've managed to save the leg, but he paused, and I could tell he was trying to find a nice way to say whatever was coming next. You'll need multiple surgeries, and there's a high probability you won't regain full function. This kind of injury, it's likely you won't be able to stand for long periods again, which means I can't work on bikes anymore. I finished for him. The words felt like rocks in my mouth. My entire life, my business, my identity, everything I'd built for myself was gone in a single moment of carelessness. I tried to wrap my head around it all. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Mia woke up then and immediately came to my side, taking my hand. I was so scared, she whispered. There was so much blood, and you were so pale. I thought I was going to lose you. I tried to smile for her sake. Thanks for saving my life. She squeezed my hand. Have your parents been here? I tried calling the number in your emergency contacts. Huh, my parents. I just shook my head. I was too tired to explain the whole fucked up situation. Then, right on cue, my phone rang. It was my dad. For a split second, I thought maybe they actually gave a shit and were calling to check on me. Dad? I answered, hating myself for still hoping. His voice came through, not concerned, just all businesslike. Derek, your mother and I need to borrow $25,000 for Tyler's equipment and relocation expenses for his new team. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. No, how are you? No, we heard you were hurt. Just straight to asking for money for Tyler. Again. I'm in the hospital, I said slowly, my voice shaking because I was trying not to completely lose my shit. I almost died yesterday. Where were you when I called begging for help? There was an awkward pause before my dad responded dismissively. Don't be so dramatic, Derek. It was just a cut. Just a cut? I couldn't hold back anymore. I nearly bled to death. The doctor said another 5 minutes and I would have died. And you were all too busy celebrating Tyler's baseball contract to care. Mia was staring at me shouting, her eyes wide. Look, my dad said, sounding annoyed like I was wasting his time. We're sorry you got hurt, but Tyler's signing is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is important. And my life isn't? I hated how pathetic I sounded. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. We need that money by next week, he finally said. I hung up without another word. Then I opened my banking app and just stared at it. For 5 years, I'd been sending my parents $1,000 a month to help out with expenses. I always figured it was the right thing to do, you know? They were struggling a bit with the mortgage, or so they said. Now I knew where that money was really going. Straight into Tyler's baseball career. With a few taps, I canceled the automatic transfer. Done. 5 years of giving them my hard-earned money, and they couldn't even be bothered to help me when I was dying. Mia sat back down, looking shocked. Derek, I couldn't help overhearing, did your parents really not come when you called them? Before I found you? I told her everything. About growing up as the forgotten son. About calling them yesterday and being ignored while they celebrated Tyler. About years of sending them money that they just funneled to my golden boy brother. By the time I finished, she looked like she wanted to punch something. That's not family, she said, her voice shaking. That's not how parents are supposed to act. That's just fucked up. She stayed with me through that whole first week in the hospital. Every day bringing me decent food because hospital food is trash, helping me figure out the TV remote, just talking to me about normal stuff to keep my mind off things. Nobody had ever done anything like that for me before. But then I got a text from Tyler. Hey bro, heard you got hurt. That sucks. Also, did you tell mom and dad you won't help with my expenses? Not cool, man. Family helps family. I didn't even bother responding. The next day, my mom called and left a voicemail. Derek, honey, I know you're upset, but this is Tyler's big break. We really need that money. Call us back. Mia was there when I played the voicemail. She took my phone and deleted it. You don't need that negativity right now, she said. Then she surprised me by taking my hand. You know what? I'm going to be your family now. Me and Max. Something about the way she said it made my chest feel tight in a completely different way than the pain meds. When she looked at me, it wasn't with pity. It was something else. Something I wasn't used to seeing directed at me. The doctors told me I'd need at least 2 more surgeries and months of physical therapy. The medical bills were already piling up, and my crappy insurance was only covering about half. I was looking at debt that would take years to pay off. Plus, I couldn't work. My shop was sitting empty, and I still had rent to pay on it. I'm screwed, I told Mia one night, when the reality of it all hit me. I can't work. I can't pay my bills. I can't keep my shop. Everything I built is just gone. She squeezed my hand. We'll figure it out. I'm not going anywhere. That night, after she left, I lay in the hospital bed, thinking about how my parents couldn't be bothered to drive 8 miles to save my life. But Mia, who I'd known for less than 2 years, was by my side every day. Some family you're born with, some family you find. And sometimes the family you find is worth a hell of a lot more than the one you were born with. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, she noticed I was still awake. You should get some rest, she said. Your girlfriend can come back tomorrow. I didn't correct her about Mia being my girlfriend. For the first time since the accident, I fell asleep with something almost like hope. The next few months were a complete shit show. Recovery from an injury like mine isn't just painful, it's humiliating. I went from being a guy who could rebuild an entire motorcycle engine to someone who needed help getting to the bathroom. 3 surgeries in 2 months. The first one was to repair more of the damage to my leg. Second was to deal with some infection that popped up. Third was to try to fix some of the nerve damage. Each time they wheeled me into the OR, I wondered if this would be the one that finally fixed me. Each time I woke up, the doctors had that same careful look on their faces. The doctor had been right. I'd never stand long enough to work on bikes again. At least not the way I used to. 8, 10 hours on my feet, working under bikes, crouching, lifting heavy parts. That was never happening again. My shop sat empty. I still had to pay rent on it, which was draining what little savings I had. The medical bills were insane. Even with insurance, I was looking at over $80,000. The health insurance I had covered maybe half the surgeries, and that was after fighting with them on the phone for hours. Mia was the only thing keeping me from completely losing my shit. She'd drive me to appointments, help with my exercises, and stay late into the evening just talking about normal stuff to distract me. Her coffee shop was doing okay, so she started bringing me dinner when she figured out, correctly, that I was skipping meals to save money. One evening, as she was helping me back into my apartment after therapy, my leg was in a brace and I was still on crutches, I finally got the balls to ask why she was doing all this. I mean, I couldn't decide if she had a crush on me, or was that just a pity project over a lonely loser? Because I care about you, dummy, she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't some perfect movie moment. I was gross and sweaty from PT, probably smelled like hospital, and was balancing awkwardly on my crutches. But for the first time since the accident, I felt like maybe my life wasn't completely over. I've had a crush on you since the day I moved in next door, she admitted, blushing a little. I kept bringing you coffee hoping you'd ask me out. I thought you were just being nice, I said, feeling like the biggest idiot on the planet. She laughed. I don't bring coffee to all the neighbors, Derek. Makes sense. 2 weeks later, she moved into my apartment. It happened naturally. She was spending most nights there anyway, helping me out. She said it was just more practical this way, but I could tell there was more to it. It should have been weird going from neighbors to roommates to whatever we were now, but it wasn't. It felt right. During all this, did my family ever call to check how I was doing? Take a wild guess. The only contact I got was my mom texting to ask if I'd reconsidered helping with Tyler's expenses. I blocked her number after that. I was starting to panic about money. My savings were almost gone. Bills were piling up and I couldn't work. I had no idea what I was going to do. My whole identity was wrapped up in being a motorcycle mechanic. What the hell else was I qualified to do? What am I gonna do, Mia? I asked one night, staring at the ceiling. I can't go back to what I was doing before. I'm fucking useless now. She propped herself up on her elbow and looked down at me. You're not useless. You're just different now. You still know more about motorcycles than anyone in this town. I snorted. Fat lot of good that does me if I can't work on them. So don't work on them, she said. Teach other people how to work on them. I looked at her like she was crazy. Who the hell would want to learn from me? Are you kidding? That kid Jamie is always hanging around your shop asking questions. Start with him. Jamie was this 19-year-old who had been lurking around my shop for months before the accident, asking about bikes. Annoying as hell, but earnest. The next day, I called him up. Want to learn how to rebuild a carburetor? I asked. He showed up at my apartment an hour later, looking like I'd just offered him $1,000,000. I taught him from my kitchen table, using diagrams and small engine parts I could work on while sitting down. It wasn't fancy, but the kid was eating it up. I charged him $20 per session, which wasn't much, but it was something. Jamie told his friends. Soon I had 3 students, then 5. I moved the lessons to my garage, where I could at least have some proper tools around. It still wasn't much money, but it was enough to make the minimum payments on my medical bills and keep the lights on. Mia watched all this with this smug, I told you so look on her face. You're a good teacher, she said one night. You ever think about making it official? Like a real trade school kind of thing? I laughed at it, but kept the idea in mind. My leg wasn't getting much better, though. The doctors said I'd probably always have pain, a limp, and always need to limit how long I stood. Some days were better than others, but I was starting to accept that this was my new normal. 4 months after the accident, I was finally well enough to go back to my shop. Not to work like before, that was never happening again, but to try this new teaching thing for real. I'd set up a small classroom area with some folding chairs and a whiteboard. The actual work area was still fully equipped, but now it was where my students would learn hands-on. My little school had 6 regular students by then, mostly guys in their late teens or early 20s who wanted to learn motorcycle repair, but couldn't afford real trade school. I charged enough to keep the lights on, but not so much that these kids couldn't afford it. It wasn't making me rich, but between that and Mia's help, I was staying afloat. Then, out of nowhere, while I was sitting at my desk going over some carburetor diagrams for the next day's lesson when I heard the shop door open. Mia was at the counter. She'd started helping out at the shop when she wasn't running her coffee place. Derek, your parents are here, she called back to me, her voice tight. My stomach dropped to my feet. I hadn't seen them since before the accident. They walked in looking exactly the same as always. Neither of them even glanced at my leg brace or the cane I was now using to get around. Derek, my dad said, getting straight to business as usual. We need to talk to you about something important. I waited, not offering them a seat or anything. Why should I? Tyler's having some problems with the team, Mom jumped in, adjusting her designer purse on her shoulder. The contract had some fine print we didn't anticipate, and he needs to buy out part of his agreement. It's a legal thing. Dad nodded gravely. It's going to cost around $450,000 to fix this situation. We've looked at all our options, and the only solution is for you to sell this place. I just stared at them, not sure if I should laugh or scream. You want me to sell my business to bail Tyler out of a contract problem? This shop is just sitting here while you're recovering, Mom said, gesturing around like my entire livelihood was just some old junk I was hoarding. If you sell it now, we can use the money to help Tyler, and there would be enough left for you to start something new once you're better. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after them leaving me to die, they had the nerve to ask me to sell my business for Tyler? Let me get this straight, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice level. You want me to sell the business that I built from nothing? The business that I can still run even with my injury? So Tyler can get out of a contract that he signed without reading? Dad frowned. Don't be selfish, Derek. This is your brother's future we're talking about. And stop acting like this is a real business. What? Teaching kids how to screw in bolts? That's not a business. I almost fell out of my chair. Selfish? Me? Before I could say anything, Mia stepped forward from the counter, her eyes blazing. Selfish? Are you serious right now? My parents looked at her like they'd just noticed she existed. Derek almost died, she said, her voice sharp and shaking with anger. He called you, begging for help, bleeding out on the floor, and you ignored him. You were too busy celebrating Tyler to even care. He's been through 3 surgeries, might never fully recover, and neither of you visited him. Not once. And now, you have the audacity to show up here and ask him to give up everything he's built just to bail Tyler out of another mess? The room went dead silent, but Mia's words hung in the air like a slap. Mom looked offended. Who are you? This is a family matter. You stay out of it. No, I cut her off. Mia is family. She's more family than either of you have ever been to me. I pointed to the door. Get out, and don't come back. Dad's face turned red. You ungrateful! Get out! I shouted, standing up despite the pain in my leg. They left, Dad slamming the door behind them hard enough to rattle the windows. Mia came to my side as I sank back into my chair, my leg throbbing like a bitch. "I'm sorry," she said, taking my hand. "I shouldn't have interfered." I squeezed her hand. Number U said exactly what needed to be said. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt bad about what happened. I didn't. But because I was still in shock that they would have the balls to ask me to sell my shop. After everything they'd done. After everything they hadn't done when I needed them. The next morning, I made a decision. I went to the bank and removed my parents from my emergency contact list. I called my lawyer. Okay, not my lawyer, a friend who happens to be a lawyer, and had him draw up a will, leaving everything to Mia. I even called the hospital and made sure they knew my parents were not to be given any information about me if anything happened again. I was cutting every single tie. A week later, Mia and I were cleaning up the shop after the day's lesson when she suddenly said, "I think we should make this official." "Make what official?" I asked. She gestured around. "This, the school. Let's actually register it as a trade school. Get some certification. Do it right." I looked at her like she was crazy. That would cost a fortune. Paperwork, licenses, equipment upgrades. "So?" She grinned. "My coffee shop is doing great. I've got savings. We could be partners." "Business partners?" I asked. She came over and kissed me on the cheek. That too. 2 weeks later, we submitted the paperwork to create Summers Motorcycle Technical Institute. Fancy name for what was basically just me teaching kids in my old shop, but Mia insisted we make it sound professional. You know what's funny? My entire life I'd tried to get my parents to notice me, to be proud of me. And now that I was finally building something good, something that might actually work, I didn't give a crap if they knew or not. Their opinion didn't matter anymore. That night, as Mia and I were celebrating with takeout, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Tyler, the first I'd heard from him since that bullshit family helps family text. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. They might lose the house because of my contract thing. Can you help?" I stared at the phone for a long time, thinking about all the years I'd put up with their crap, and the way they trying to spin everything. Still, they have the audacity to call me and ask for help, and guilt trip me. I typed, "And you're my brother, but none of you acted like family when I was bleeding out on the floor. I've got a real family now. Good luck with your baseball career." Then I blocked his number too. Mia wrapped her arms around me from behind. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Actually, I think I am." I felt completely at peace with my decision. They'd made their choice a long time ago. Now I was making mine. Recently, I found out through an old high school friend that my parents ended up losing the house after all. They couldn't make the mortgage payments after spending everything they had on Tyler's contract buyout. Apparently, they moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Dad had to come out of retirement and take a job at the local hardware store. Mom started working part-time at a department store. Karma's a bitch, I guess. Whenever I catch myself feeling bad for them, I remember the sight of my own blood pooling around me while they popped champagne for Tyler, and that feeling disappears pretty damn quick. As for Tyler, his baseball career crashed and burned spectacularly. After all that money spent to fix his contract issues, he showed up to training out of shape and with a major attitude problem. The team gave him multiple warnings before cutting him loose after just one season. Last I heard, he's working as an assistant coach at some small-town high school, still talking about his almost pro career. The golden child finally had to face reality. He wasn't special, just spoiled. Sometimes I wonder if he ever realized how much our parents sacrificed for him and how little they gave a shit about me. And yeah, it's been 3 years now since everything went down. Mia and I got married last spring in a small ceremony with just our friends and her family. Our motorcycle school now has its official certification and a waiting list 2 months long. We're even thinking about expanding to a second location. My leg still gives me trouble, and I'll always walk with a limp, but I've learned to work around it. Some nights I still wake up in a cold sweat, phantom pain shooting through my leg, memories of that day still fresh. But Mia's always there, holding me until I fall back asleep. My old family might have left me to die, but my new one gives me a reason to live, and that's more than enough for me. So what would you have done in my shoes? Cut them off like I did? Try to forgive? I'm curious what other people think. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right call, but then I look at what I've built from the ashes of that day, and I think maybe, just maybe, it was the only call I could have made. Edit. Thanks for all the comments and support. For those asking, yes, Max is still doing great. He's getting old and lazy, but still the best shop dog around. This story is titled, "I told my fiancé I was cut out of the family business, but it was a plan to expose her gold digger mask." Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. All right, let's get started. Hi Reddit, I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but after everything that's gone down, I feel like this story needs to be shared. It's about realizing that not everyone you let into your life deserves to stay. I'll start by saying I've always been a guy who takes care of the people I care about. My dad taught me that. He built a real estate development company from the ground up, turning it into something massive. But he also made sure my brother Luke and I earned our way. Summers on job sites, late nights learning the business, it wasn't handed to us on a silver platter. So when I started making good money, I didn't mind spending it on the woman I loved. Enter Monica, my ex-fiancée now. From the moment I met her, she had this energy about her. Confident, stylish, the kind of woman who turns heads without even trying. We clicked right away, and I thought I'd found the one. I'm not going to lie. I liked spoiling her. If she mentioned wanting something, I'd make it happen. A designer bag? Done. Weekend getaways? Sure. Dinner at the nicest places in town? I didn't even blink. It wasn't about showing off or keeping her happy to keep her around. I just believed she deserved the best. At the time, I thought that's what love was. Giving. And to her credit, Monica played the part of the perfect fiancé. She'd light up whenever I surprised her with something, call me her provider, and tell her friends how lucky she was. And yeah, I ate it up. But everything changed when my dad passed away a few months ago. Losing him wasn't just a personal blow. It was like losing the foundation of everything I'd built my life on. He wasn't just my father. He was my mentor, the guy who showed me how to navigate the world. I was grieving, trying to figure out what life looked like without him. And at the same time, I had to step up in the business alongside Luke. It was a lot. Monica, though? She didn't seem to notice or care how much I was struggling. At first, I thought it was just her way of giving me space. She wasn't exactly the nurturing type, but I figured everyone processes loss differently. Except it wasn't just that she wasn't supportive, it was the shift in her focus. Barely 2 weeks after the funeral, she started asking questions about the company. And not the casual, "How's work going?" kind of questions. No, these were pointed, detailed, business-focused questions. When do you officially take over? Who's on the board now? Do you have full control? Is Luke going to try to take a bigger piece of the company? At first, I answered because I didn't think much of it. But the more she asked, the more it felt wrong. She didn't ask how I was holding up or if I needed anything. She didn't even mention my dad unless it was in the context of the business. All she seemed to care about was what came next. And not for us, but for her. The questions weren't just weird. They were relentless. I'd come home after a long day, exhausted from balancing work and grief, and she'd pounce. How much equity do you have now? Do you have final say on contracts? Or does that go through Luke? What about expansion? Are you leading that now? It was like she'd been waiting for this moment. And now that it was here, she wasn't wasting any time. I started noticing other things too. The way she talked about the business, like it was her golden ticket. The way she'd casually mention projects to our friends, dropping hints about how we were growing the company. And don't even get me started on the way she started throwing Luke's name into conversations. "Luke's so business savvy," she'd say. "You two must make such a great team." At first, I chalked it up to pride, her wanting to show off my success. But the more I paid attention, the more it felt calculated. She started pushing to attend meetings she had no reason to be at, claiming she wanted to learn more about the business. She even suggested hosting a dinner for the board members, saying it would help her build relationships. It was all so transparent. The thing is, Monica had always loved the perks of my lifestyle. But this was different. It wasn't about enjoying the benefits of being with me. It was about positioning herself. She wasn't acting like a fiancé. She was acting like someone vying for a spot on the company's payroll. I didn't say anything at first because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this was just her way of coping. Maybe she thought she was helping by being involved. But deep down, I knew better. One night, as we sat on the couch, she casually dropped a line that stopped me cold. "So, if something happened and you weren't running the company, what would you do?" The question hit me like a brick. Not because it was offensive, on the surface it wasn't, but because it revealed how she saw me. Not as Max, the man she supposedly loved, but as Max, the guy tied to a multi-million-dollar company. I couldn't let it go. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said it, like she was testing the waters. It stayed with me, gnawing at the back of my mind. Was I being paranoid? Or was there something deeper going on? I started replaying every interaction we'd had since Dad passed. Things I'd brushed off before suddenly felt different. She wasn't acting like someone who loved me and wanted to help me through a tough time. Instead, It felt like she was sizing me up, like she was calculating her next move. It didn't help that she'd become almost obsessed with the company. She'd always known what I did for a living, but she'd never cared about the details before. Now, it was all she wanted to talk about. Whenever we were together, the conversation somehow ended up circling back to work. My role, Luke's role, the board, the projects. One night, we were sitting in the living room, and she was scrolling through her phone. Out of nowhere, she said, "You know, I was reading this article about succession planning. It said family businesses can get really messy if roles aren't clearly defined. Do you and Luke ever fight about who's in charge?" I glanced at her, trying to read her expression, but she didn't even look up from her phone. "Not really," I said, keeping my tone casual. "We both know our strengths, and we work together. It's not a competition." She nodded, like that answer satisfied her, but I could see the gears turning. It wasn't the first time she'd brought up Luke. Lately, it seemed like she was more interested in his role in the company than in anything I was doing. At first, I thought she was just being polite. Luke and I had always been close, so it made sense that she'd want to get along with him. But now, it felt like something else entirely. The turning point came a few days later. I was in my home office trying to catch up on some paperwork when Monica came in holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one with a smile and perched herself on the edge of the desk. "You've been working so hard lately," she said, her tone sweet but oddly deliberate. "Do you ever feel like you're carrying all the weight on your shoulders?" I shrugged. "It comes with the territory." She leaned in a little closer. "But doesn't it bother you that Luke gets to share the load without dealing with the same pressure? I mean, you're the face of the company now. He's just assisting, right?" That hit a nerve. Not because she was right. Luke and I had always been equals in the business, but because it felt like she was trying to plant a seed of doubt. "Luke's not just assisting," I said, a little sharper than I intended. "We're a team. Always have been." She pulled back, looking surprised, but she didn't drop it. "I just think you deserve more credit, that's all. You're the one running the show now." I didn't respond, but the whole conversation left a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't like Monica to talk about Luke that way. If anything, she'd always been polite and respectful toward him. But now, it felt like she was trying to drive a wedge between us. Or maybe she was testing how much control I really had. After that, I couldn't stop noticing the little things she did. When we went to events, she'd position herself near the power players, laughing at their jokes and slipping into their conversations like she belonged there. At home, she'd casually ask me about deals and contracts. And whenever Luke came up, she'd find a way to steer the conversation back to his role in the company. The worst part was, I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Luke would have called her out immediately, and I wasn't ready to go there yet. My friends didn't know her well enough to see the change, and I wasn't about to burden my mom while she was still grieving. So I kept it to myself, turning the pieces over in my head and trying to make sense of it all. Was I imagining things? Or was Monica showing me who she really was? One night, I decided to test her. Nothing big, just a casual comment to see how she'd react. We were having dinner, and I mentioned that a new project was running over budget. "It's going to be a headache," I said, spearing a piece of steak with my fork. "The board's not happy, and Luke's been up to his ears in it." Her eyes lit up, and she leaned forward. "Oh? What's the project?" "It's just a residential development," I said, keeping my tone light. "But it's tied to a lot of other deals, so the pressure's on." She nodded, clearly trying to act nonchalant. "Sounds stressful. Are you the one who has to handle all that?" "Not really," I said. "Luke's taking the lead on this one. He's better at the big picture stuff." Her face didn't change, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She didn't press the issue, but the fact that she'd latched onto the project so quickly confirmed what I'd already suspected. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in what I could give her. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out my next move. I didn't have concrete proof yet, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. The hardest part was reconciling the Monica I'd fallen for with the person she was becoming. When we first met, she'd been so warm, so genuine, or at least I'd thought she was. Now, it felt like everything she did was calculated, like she was playing a game I didn't even know I'd entered, but I wasn't about to let her win. If Monica thought she could manipulate me into giving her what she wanted, she was in for a rude awakening. I'd spent my whole life watching my dad navigate tough situations, and if there was one thing he taught me, it was how to spot a snake in the grass. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to sit back and let her control the narrative. If she was playing a game, I was going to play it better. By the time I decided to test Monica, I wasn't questioning if her intentions were bad. I was questioning how far she'd go. Every little thing she did seemed like another piece of the puzzle falling into place, and I knew I needed to act before it was too late. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Monica wasn't in this relationship for me. She was here for the lifestyle, the money, the access. And now, with my dad gone, she saw an opportunity to cement her position in the family business. Or at least that's what it looked like. But I wasn't about to sit back and let her play me. If she was here for the wrong reasons, I needed to know for sure. And the best way to do that was to create a scenario where her true colors would shine through. I spent a few days planning how I'd do it. It had to be believable, but also hit her where it mattered most, her vision of our future together. If she thought my role in the business wasn't as secure as she'd assumed, I wanted to see how she'd react. Would she stick around, or would she start looking for the next opportunity? One evening, after dinner, I decided to drop the first hint. We were sitting on the couch, and I casually said, "I've been thinking a lot about how things are going to change now that Dad's gone. There's been a lot of talk about restructuring." Monica looked up from her phone. Her interest clearly piqued. "Restructuring? What kind of restructuring?" I shrugged, keeping my tone nonchalant. "Oh, just a few shifts here and there. Nothing major. It's mostly about making sure everything's running smoothly." She nodded, but I could tell she was waiting for me to say more. Over the next few days, I started dropping more breadcrumbs. Little comments about the board, how decisions were being made, and how my role might not be as secure as she thought. I wasn't outright lying, but I was definitely painting a picture that would make her question my future in the company. Finally, one night, I decided to lay it all out. "Monica," I said, sitting her down in the living room, "there's something I need to tell you." She tilted her head, looking concerned. "What is it?" I sighed, trying to look conflicted. "So, I've been going over Dad's will with the family lawyer, and there's something I found out that I wasn't expecting. It turns out I'm not his biological son." Her eyes widened. "What? That doesn't make any sense." "I know," I said, shaking my head. "Apparently, Dad adopted me when I was a baby, but I guess he never wanted it to be a big deal. The thing is, because of that, the majority of the inheritance is going to Luke. He's taking over as CEO, and I'm only getting a small portion." Monica sat there for a moment, processing what I'd just said. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "Wait," she said slowly. "So, you're not going to be in charge?" I shook my head. I'll still have a role in the company, but it's more like a consultant. Luke's the one running the show now." Her face tightened, but she quickly masked it with a weak smile. "Well, as long as you're okay with it, right? That's what matters." "Yeah," I said, leaning back. "It's not ideal, but it is what it is. At least I don't have to deal with all the stress of running the company." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. Her mind was already racing, trying to figure out what this meant for her. After planting the idea that my role in the company wasn't as secure as Monica thought, I sat back and watched. I didn't have to wait long to see the cracks start forming. It was subtle at first, but the shift in her behavior was impossible to miss once you knew what to look for. She started talking about Luke a lot more. Not just in passing, but in a way that felt calculated. "Luke's really stepping up, huh?" she'd say, almost like she was fishing for something. Or, "It's impressive how he's handling everything. He's got such a strong presence." Hearing her talk about my brother like that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like she was testing how far she could push before I noticed. But I didn't call her out. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. One day, she brought up Luke in a way that really set me off. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and she was scrolling through her phone as usual. Out of nowhere, she said, "Do you think Luke ever feels overwhelmed? With all the responsibility he has now?" I shrugged, keeping my tone casual. "Probably. It's a big job." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I should check in with him, just to see how he's doing. It's important to support each other during transitions like this." I wanted to laugh at the audacity of it. Monica had never shown much interest in Luke before, and now she was suddenly concerned about his well-being? It was obvious what she was doing, but I played along. "That's nice of you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm sure he'd appreciate it." The next few days confirmed everything I'd been suspecting. She started texting Luke more frequently, always under the guise of support. At first, it was harmless stuff, articles about leadership, little comments about how impressed she was with his work, but then it got bolder. One night, Luke forwarded me a message from her. It read, "I admire how decisive you are. You're so good at taking charge. Max is great, but you have this natural confidence that's really inspiring." Reading it made my blood boil, but I held back my anger. I wanted to see how far she was willing to take things. Over the next week, the messages became more personal. She'd ask Luke how his day was going, share stories about her stressful schedule, and even start dropping compliments about his appearance. "You always look so sharp in meetings," one of her texts read. "It's really impressive." Then came the photos. They weren't inappropriate, at least not overtly, but they were clearly meant to get his attention. One was of her at a high-end coffee shop captioned, "This place made me think of you. We should grab coffee here sometime." Another was of her in a sleek outfit saying, "I was thinking about wearing this to the next event. What do you think?" It was painfully transparent. Luke and I had always been close, and he didn't hold back when he showed me everything. "She's not even trying to be subtle," he said, shaking his head. "You sure you don't want me to say something?" "Not yet," I told him. "I want to see how far she'll go." The final straw came when Monica showed up at Luke's office unannounced. He texted me as soon as she arrived, saying she'd claimed she was in the area and wanted to stop by to check on him. She brought him coffee and sat in his office for nearly an hour, talking about the company and how impressed she was with his leadership. "She's laying it on thick," Luke said when he called me afterward. "At this point, it's like she's auditioning for a role." That night, Monica came home acting like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and curled up on the couch like everything was normal. But I couldn't even look at her the same way. She wasn't the woman I thought I was going to marry. She wasn't the person I'd fallen in love with. And now that I'd seen her true colors, I couldn't unsee them. The most shocking part was how easy it had been for her to switch gears. The moment she thought my position in the company was shaky, she started angling for Luke. It wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about what she could get out of it. I spent the rest of the week documenting everything. Luke and I kept a record of her texts, photos, and visits. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, there'd be no room for her to deny what she'd done. She thought she was being clever, but she didn't realize that we were one step ahead. By the end of the week, I had more than enough proof to confront her. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger just yet. I wanted to see if she'd dig herself in even deeper. The way she acted around me was almost comical. She still played the role of the supportive fiancé, asking me how work was going and pretending to care about my stress. But her questions always had an edge to them, like she was fishing for something. "What did the board say about the new project?" she asked one night. "They approved it," I said simply. "That's great," she said, her tone a little too cheerful. "Did Luke present it? He's really good at that kind of thing." It took everything in me not to roll my eyes. "Yeah, he did a great job." Her smile faltered for a second, and I could see the disappointment behind her eyes. She was trying so hard to act like she cared about me, but her true motives were written all over her face. By now, I wasn't just angry. I was disgusted. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who would do whatever it took to climb the ladder. She wasn't my partner. She was a parasite. But I wasn't about to let her win. The pieces were all in place and the trap was set. Now it was just a matter of time before she realized she'd been caught. By the time Monica agreed to meet Luke at his apartment, I knew she had taken the bait. Every step she'd taken over the past few weeks had been more desperate, more blatant. Now she thought she was closing in on her next move, but she had no idea we were way ahead of her. The plan was simple. Luke invited her over under the pretense of discussing the company. He told her he wanted to go over some ideas about the business, especially since he was the one running things now. Of course, Monica jumped at the opportunity. She made sure to ask if I'd be there, and when Luke casually said I'd be busy, her response was a little too eager. "Oh, perfect. That works out." The day of the meeting, I was already set up at Luke's apartment before she arrived. Luke lived in a sleek high-rise with a great view of the city. Exactly the kind of place Monica would have pictured herself living if she played her cards right. I was tucked away in one of the spare bedrooms, phone in hand, ready to record everything. We didn't need a lot of elaborate prep. Monica was so caught up in her own schemes that she didn't bother being cautious. When the doorbell rang, I stayed completely still as I heard Luke let her in. "Wow," Monica said, her voice bright and sugary. "Your place is amazing. I don't remember it being this nice last time I was here." Luke laughed. "Yeah, well, I had a few upgrades done recently. Gotta keep things sharp." Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she walked further inside. "I brought this for you," she said, and I could hear her setting something down on the counter. Luke later told me it was a ridiculously expensive painting. Who brings a painting to a casual business talk? Monica, that's who. From my spot in the spare bedroom, I had a perfect view through a small gap in the door. Monica had dressed to impress. Tight red dress, perfectly styled hair, and makeup done like she was heading to some high-end gala instead of a simple meeting. She had that smile on her face, The one she used when she wanted something, and it was nauseating to see it directed at Luke. The conversation started out harmless enough. She asked how he was handling the new responsibility and complimented his leadership skills. She leaned forward slightly as they talked, her body language almost screaming, "Look at me, I'm here for you." Luke, to his credit, played it cool. He didn't give her much, just enough to keep her talking. "You're really good at this," she said after a few minutes. "It's no wonder your dad trusted you with everything. You've got such a clear vision for the company." "Thanks," Luke replied casually, like he wasn't even fazed. She laughed lightly. "I mean it. Not everyone has that kind of presence. Max is great, of course, but you have this natural confidence that's just so impressive." Hearing her say that made my stomach churn. She didn't even hesitate to throw me under the bus. She kept finding ways to steer the conversation toward herself. "You know," she said, tilting her head, "I've always been interested in the business side of things. I think it's fascinating how much potential there is for growth. I'd love to help in any way I can." Luke nodded, playing along. "What kind of role do you see yourself in?" Monica smiled, her tone becoming more flirtatious. "Oh, I don't know. Something supportive. I'm good at organizing and motivating people. I think I could bring a lot to the table." She reached out and lightly touched his arm, laughing at something he said. It was so calculated, so blatant, and I felt a surge of anger as I recorded the whole thing. She didn't even look like she was trying to hide her intentions. After about 20 minutes of small talk and thinly veiled compliments, Monica made her move. "You know," she said, her voice dropping slightly, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. You and I could make an amazing team. With your leadership and my support, there's no limit to what we could accomplish." She slid a little closer to him on the couch, her knee nearly brushing his. "Imagine it. The two of us working side by side. The company would thrive." Luke leaned back slightly, keeping a polite distance. "What about Max?" he asked, his tone neutral. Her response made me grip my phone tighter. "Max is sweet, but let's be real. He doesn't have the drive you do. He's comfortable where he is. But you're different. You're ambitious. You have a vision." My fists clenched as I recorded her words. She had no idea she was digging her own grave. Then came the final move. She placed her hand on Luke's shoulder, leaning in just slightly. "I think we could do great things together, Luke. Don't you?" Luke glanced at his watch, keeping his cool. "You know, I just remembered I have to head out soon. Something urgent came up." Monica blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, well, I guess we can pick this up another time." Luke nodded, already standing up and moving toward the door. "Yeah, for sure. Thanks for stopping by." I stayed hidden until I heard the front door close behind her. When I finally came out of the room, Luke looked at me and shook his head. "She's unbelievable," he said. "You got all that?" "Every word," I replied, holding up my phone. I couldn't even feel angry anymore. Just a cold, quiet satisfaction. She thought she was playing us, but now we had everything we needed to expose her for who she really was. The day of the unmasking arrived, and I won't lie. I'd been looking forward to it. Not in a vindictive way. Okay, maybe a little. But because I wanted to finally close the chapter on Monica's lies and deceit. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, watching her maneuver, and pretending everything was fine. Now it was time to put all the cards on the table. The setting couldn't have been more perfect. A family dinner to celebrate my dad's legacy. It was the kind of event where everyone close to the family showed up. Extended relatives, business associates, and even a few board members from the company. Monica had, of course, insisted on being there. "It's important to show your family that we're united," she'd said, her tone oozing with self-importance. She arrived dressed to impress, wearing a designer dress I'd bought her months ago. She looked every bit the part of a supportive fiancé, poised, polished, and ready to charm anyone who crossed her path. But I knew the truth. Beneath that perfect exterior was someone who was about to have her entire facade ripped apart. Luke and I had planned everything carefully. We weren't going to cause a scene or turn the dinner into a public spectacle, but we wanted everyone who mattered to see Monica for who she really was. The evidence was ready. Screenshots of her messages, recordings of her conversations, and even the video from Luke's apartment. There was no way she could talk her way out of this. The evening started off normally enough. Guests mingled, and everyone was reminiscing about my dad. Monica played her part perfectly, laughing at the right moments and nodding along to stories she didn't even know. I kept my distance, letting her enjoy her last moments of pretending she belonged in this world. When dinner was served, the real show began. Luke stood up to give a toast, his voice calm and steady as he spoke about our dad's legacy and the values he instilled in us. Monica looked positively glowing, probably thinking she was about to ride the coattails of that legacy into her dream life. But then Luke's tone shifted. "There's something else I want to address tonight," he said, glancing around the room. "It's not easy to talk about, but I think it's important for everyone here to know the truth." The room went silent, all eyes on him. Monica tilted her head, a slight frown crossing her face. She didn't realize what was coming. Not yet. "As you all know, my brother Max has been through a lot recently. Losing Dad, stepping into new responsibilities, it hasn't been easy. And through it all, he's had the support of someone who was supposed to stand by him no matter what." Monica smiled, probably assuming Luke was talking about her in a positive light. Her hand even moved to touch my arm, like she wanted to bask in the attention. "But," Luke continued, his expression hardening, "sometimes people aren't who they appear to be. And unfortunately, Max has learned that the hard way." That's when I stood up. "Monica," I said, turning to face her, "I think it's time we had a real conversation about your intentions." Her smile froze, and her hand dropped from my arm. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaky. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and held it up. "This," I said, tapping the screen to play the recording from Luke's apartment. The room filled with her voice as she praised Luke's leadership, criticized me, and suggested that the two of them would make a great team. Her face went pale as the recording continued, the weight of her words hanging in the air. By the time the audio reached the part where she called me sweet but comfortable and leaned into Luke for her final pitch, she looked like she wanted to disappear. When the recording ended, the room was dead silent. All eyes were on Monica, who was now stammering and looking around frantically. That's not what it sounds like," she said, her voice high-pitched and defensive. "You don't understand. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I said, my tone cold. "Because I have screenshots of your texts too. You were planning this from the moment you thought I wasn't the one in charge." She turned to Luke, her expression desperate. "Luke, tell them. You know this isn't what it looks like. I was trying to help." Luke didn't even flinch. "Help? By trying to undermine Max and position yourself as my partner? That's what you call help?" Her parents, who had been sitting across the table, looked horrified. Her mother's face was red with embarrassment, while her father leaned forward, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "Monica," her father said, his voice low and stern. "What is he talking about? Is this true?" "Dad, no, it's not true," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "They're twisting everything. They're trying to make me look bad." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "No one's twisting anything. These are your words, Monica. Your actions. You made your choice when you decided to betray me, and now you're facing the consequences." She broke down then, crying and pleading. "Please, Max, you don't understand. I was scared about our future. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I panicked." I shook my head, my voice steady. "You didn't panic. You calculated. You saw an opportunity, and you went for it. But you underestimated me, and my family." Her parents looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Her father stood up abruptly, muttering apologies to me and Luke before turning to his daughter. "We'll talk about this later," he said sharply. "Get your things. We're leaving." Monica turned to me one last time, her face streaked with tears. "Max, please, I love you. We can fix this." But I didn't falter. "No, Monica, we can't. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I can't unsee it. This is over." As her father dragged her out of the room, the tension in the air finally broke. The rest of the guests looked awkward, unsure of what to say or do. Luke clapped me on the shoulder, his way of saying, "You did the right thing." After dinner, a few people came up to me, offering their support. Some were shocked, others unsurprised. But everyone agreed on one thing. Monica had no place in my life, or in our family. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of her lies and manipulation was gone, and I could finally focus on what mattered, rebuilding my life without her in it. The next day, I started getting texts from her. At first, they were the usual desperate attempts to apologize. "Max, I'm so sorry. Please, let me explain." Then came the excuses. "You misunderstood everything. I only wanted what was best for us." When I didn't respond, she escalated. "I can't believe you'd betray me like that. After everything we've been through." I blocked her number, but she found other ways to reach out. Emails, messages through mutual friends, even handwritten letters left at my door. Each one was more frantic than the last. She alternated between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of ruining her life. It was exhausting, but I refused to engage. She didn't deserve a response, and I wasn't going to waste any more energy on her. Then, a week later, she dropped the news. I was sitting in my office going over some paperwork when an email from Monica popped up in my inbox. The subject line read, "You need to know this." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a single line. "I'm pregnant, Max. It's your baby." I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. My first reaction wasn't shock or panic. It was disbelief. This was Monica, the same woman who had lied, manipulated, and betrayed me at every turn. There was no way she was telling the truth now. This wasn't about a baby. This was her last-ditch effort to regain control. Still, I couldn't ignore it completely. I forwarded the email to Luke with a short message. "Look at this nonsense." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Luke calling me. "Did you respond?" he asked. "Nope," I said, "and I'm not going to." "She's full of it." "Good," he said. "She's probably hoping you'll freak out and go running back to her. Don't give her the satisfaction." I wasn't planning to. I knew Monica well enough to see through her game. She'd lied about everything else. Why should this be any different? But Monica wasn't giving up that easily. Over the next few days, she started contacting my family. She called my mom, claiming she was pregnant and terrified about what to do. She even reached out to Luke, saying she needed to talk to him about the future of our family. Luke shut her down immediately. "If it's Max's, get a paternity test," he told her flatly. "Otherwise, stop wasting my time." When that didn't work, she turned to her own parents. I don't know exactly what she told them, but whatever it was, it didn't fly. By then, her parents were already furious with her over the scandal at the dinner. Her dad had apparently been receiving calls from people in their social circle, asking what had happened and why their daughter was being talked about in such unflattering terms. For a family as proud and image-conscious as hers, it was the ultimate humiliation. After one particularly heated argument, her parents kicked her out. She showed up at my apartment that same night, pounding on the door and yelling for me to let her in. When I didn't answer, she slumped against the door, crying loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. "Max, please," she sobbed. "I have nowhere else to go. I need you. We can fix this. For the baby's sake." Eventually, one of my neighbors came out and told her to leave. She screamed at them, calling them names, but she finally stormed off, muttering about how I'd regret this. That was the last time I saw her in person, but her attempts to contact me didn't stop. She kept sending emails, insisting she was pregnant and needed my help. I ignored them all. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Monica had been staying on friends' couches, trying to scrape together enough money to get by. Her parents had completely cut her off, and word of her behavior had spread far enough that most people didn't want anything to do with her. She'd gone from living a comfortable, glamorous life to struggling just to survive. The last email I got from her came about a month after the dinner. It was long, rambling, and full of contradictions. She said she was sorry, that she loved me, that she hated me, that she was pregnant, that she wasn't pregnant but might be, that she couldn't live without me, and that she hoped I burned in hell. It was the most unhinged thing I'd ever read, and I deleted it without replying. Now, months later, my life is peaceful again. I've moved on, focusing on the things that truly matter: my family, the business, and my own happiness. Luke and I are closer than ever, and the company is thriving under our leadership. Every now and then, someone will ask about Monica, and I'll just shrug and say, she's in the past. Because that's exactly where she belongs. In the past. Her greed, her lies, her manipulation, it all led to her downfall. She thought she could play me, but in the end, she only played herself. I know who I am, and I know what I deserve. And it sure as hell isn't someone like her. At 14, my mom told me I couldn't join the family Christmas trip unless I called her new husband Dad. I refused, and watched her world collapse, a brutal divorce, a custody battle she lost, and a daughter who grew up, never knowing the brother she tried to erase. My name's Liam, and when I was 13, my life turned into a very expensive experiment about family values. I didn't hate my stepdad, Greg. Hating him would have meant caring enough to try. What I felt was closer to irritation, like a mosquito that kept landing on my arm and calling itself my father. That summer, my mom, Clara, married Greg, and our house turned from casual chaos into military headquarters. Greg was ex-Army, the kind of man who alphabetized spices and believed weekends were for mowing lawns, not sleeping in. Dinner happened at exactly 6. Chores appeared on a laminated schedule on the fridge. He even installed a whiteboard in the hallway labeled Weekly Objectives. My name was always there, usually next to something I hadn't agreed to do. Clara called it structure. I called it living in a spreadsheet. Before Greg, things were messy but manageable. My dad, David, wasn't around much. New jobs, new cities, a string of almost successes. But when he showed up, he made life feel lighter. We'd order too much pizza, play video games, and laugh until Mom yelled about bedtime. She called him unreliable. I called him Dad. Greg was different. Dependable, serious, a man who treated grocery lists like mission plans. I might have respected him if Mom had left me alone about it. But she couldn't. It started small. Greg picked you up from school. Say thank you. Then, you should call him Dad now. It would mean a lot. Then, you need to call him Dad. It's disrespectful not to. I refused. Greg didn't care. Call me whatever makes you comfortable, he'd say. But Mom treated it like a national security issue. One night at dinner, she asked me to pass the salt and added, "And thank Dad for making this meal possible." I stared at her for 10 seconds, slid the salt across the table, and said nothing. Greg cleared his throat and changed the subject. By fall, she decided therapy would fix me. Family bonding, she called it. The therapist, a man who wore too many pens, listened while she explained my attachment issues. When it was my turn, I said I wasn't resisting anything. I already had a dad. He scribbled notes, probably writing smartass. Therapy didn't help. It just gave Mom new vocabulary. Now I wasn't just rude, I was emotionally avoidant. Greg sat silently through every session, hands folded, eyes distant, like he'd rather be defusing a bomb. At home, Mom's campaign escalated. She read my texts for safety, blocked visits with Dad for family plans, and once handed me a pre-written speech to read at dinner about how much I appreciated Greg's leadership. I tore it in half and asked if dessert was still happening. She cried that night. Greg went for a run. By winter, we were living in two realities. In hers, we were healing and growing. In mine, we were trapped in a hostage negotiation with better furniture. David noticed the changes. He started calling more, suggesting road trips, offering extra weekends. Most of them were mysteriously blocked by conflicts. I told him not to worry. I lied. By spring, I was used to the new normal. 10 p.m. curfews, mandatory Sunday dinners, and a weekly therapy appointment where strangers analyzed my tone. I wrote in my journal one night, apparently, respect comes in 3 forms: verbal, financial, and tattooed on your forehead. It was a joke, but part of me suspected she'd actually consider the tattoo. The summer I turned 14 was approaching, and the pressure was rising. Clara was convinced that if she pushed hard enough, I'd break. Greg was convinced he could stay neutral forever. And I was convinced that one word, Dad, was about to cost us more than any of us could imagine. By the time I turned 14, the dad situation had gone from background noise to Clara's full-time job. It stopped being a suggestion and became a mission, and I was the enemy combatant. She started small, as always. A fun fishing trip one Saturday morning, where Greg taught me how to cast a line. I didn't ask to go, but apparently bonding was mandatory now. She took pictures of us in matching hats and posted them online with captions like, "Father and son time. Nothing stronger than this bond." The comments were full of heart emojis. I didn't even like fishing. Then came the family photos. She scheduled a session with a photographer and insisted we all wear coordinated outfits. At one point, she told me, "Smile like you're proud of your dad." I smiled like I was posing for a mugshot. When Father's Day rolled around, she pushed it further. "We're all writing speeches," she announced over breakfast, "about what Greg means to us." I told her I'd rather write about climate change. She didn't laugh. I wrote nothing. Every refusal turned the air in the house thicker. Greg tried to stay out of it. He'd say things like, "It's fine, Clara," or "He doesn't need to do anything he's not ready for." But the more neutral he stayed, the more determined she became. To her, my refusal wasn't just teenage stubbornness. It was defiance. And defiance needed to be broken. Then Greg dropped a bomb. He wanted to adopt me. He brought it up one evening after dinner, as casually as if he were suggesting we repaint the living room. "It's just paperwork," he said, "but it would make us official." Clara's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Mine narrowed. "No," I said immediately. "Why not?" she asked. "Because I already have a dad." That answer wasn't enough. She launched into a monologue about responsibility and sacrifice, how Greg had been there when David wasn't, how blood didn't make a parent, commitment did. It was a good speech, almost convincing, but it wasn't my job to make Greg feel like his efforts paid off. From that moment, the campaign intensified. She started correcting me every time I said Greg's name. At church, if I asked, "Where's Greg?" she'd chirp, "You mean Dad?" loud enough for everyone to hear. At school events, she'd introduce him as Liam's father and shoot me a warning look if I didn't follow her lead. Even online, she couldn't stop. A photo of me and Greg fixing the lawnmower appeared on her Facebook with the caption, "A son learning from his father. This is what real family looks like." I commented, "That's Greg." She deleted the comment within minutes. The real breaking point came at a Sunday family dinner. Greg's parents, the Hollises, were there, along with Clara's sister and a couple of neighbors she was trying to impress. It was one of those over-the-top dinners with roast beef, crystal glasses, and way too many side dishes. Clara had set the table like we were expecting royalty. Halfway through the meal, she stood up with her wine glass. "I think," she said, "that this is a perfect time for Liam to say a few words." "About his father." I stared at her. "What?" "About Greg," she clarified, smiling too hard. "How much he means to you. How grateful you are." I shook my head. "I don't have anything to say." Her smile froze. "Liam, please." The room was silent. Every eye was on me. Greg looked uncomfortable, his fork hovering over his plate. "Say something," Clara pressed. "Anything." I could have said something neutral. "Thanks for being here. I appreciate what you do." But I was tired. Tired of the pushing, the pretending, the constant public performances. "He's not my dad," I said. "He's your mistake." The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was seismic. Greg's chair scraped the floor as he stood and walked out of the room without a word. Clara's face went white, then red, then pale again. One of the Hollises muttered something about needing air and excused himself. The neighbors exchanged glances and suddenly remembered they had somewhere to be. Within 5 minutes, the table had cleared. Just me, Clara, and a half-eaten roast that nobody wanted anymore. She sat there, staring at her plate, tears running down her face in silence. I finished my potatoes, put my dish in the sink, and went to my room. Later, when I replayed that moment, I realized how much damage 6 words could do. Greg didn't speak to me for days. Clara locked herself in the bedroom and cried so loudly the neighbors probably heard. The Hollises stopped inviting us over for Sunday dinners. And for the next several weeks, I was officially labeled the problem. Clara called it the night I humiliated this family. Everyone else called it understandable teenage anger. I called it Tuesday. The house changed after that. Clara became quieter around me, more brittle. Greg started coming home later from work. Family dinners turned into silent meals where we stared at our plates and pretended nothing had happened. I thought maybe the war was over, that they'd finally accept I wasn't going to change just because they wanted me to. But Clara wasn't done. If anything, that night convinced her she'd been too gentle before. She'd tried kindness. She'd tried therapy. Now she was ready to try consequences. By the time winter rolled around, Clara had traded subtle manipulation for open warfare. My refusal to call Greg Dad was now treated like a national scandal. Therapy hadn't worked. Guilt trips hadn't worked. Public humiliation at the dinner table hadn't worked. So she decided to try one last desperate strategy: bribery dressed as a family vacation. The plan was pitched as one last trip before the baby arrives. Clara said it was about bonding, making memories, and starting a new chapter. But the truth was obvious. It was a photo op with palm trees. Greg booked everything: flights, hotels, park passes, the works, even matching t-shirts. Because nothing says authentic family like coordinated polyester with a hashtag on the back. He was excited, I'll give him that. He'd been saving up vacation days for months, and he talked about the trip like it was going to fix everything. Clara was worse. She'd started calling it our fresh start. Every time I questioned why I even needed to be there, she'd say, "Because this is how families heal." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't argue. The trip was scheduled for Christmas break, and I figured if nothing else, I could at least enjoy a week away from freezing weather and algebra homework. One night, about a week before we were set to leave, I overheard Clara on the phone with a friend. "This is going to be the trip that changes everything," she said, pacing the kitchen. "Once we're all there together, he'll finally feel like part of the family. He'll stop fighting it." I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Being part of the family wasn't something you earned by standing in line for overpriced churros. A few days later, I was on the phone with my friend Noah, talking about the trip. "Yeah," I said. "I'm going with my mom and Greg." Clara was walking past the room as I said it. She froze mid-step. "What did you just say?" I turned around. "I said I'm going with you and Greg." Her eyes narrowed. "You mean your dad?" "No," I said. "I mean Greg." The room went dead silent. Her jaw clenched, and for a second I thought she might actually throw the mug in her hand. "You are still doing this? After everything we've been through? After everything he's done for you?" "Yeah," I said, "because he's Greg. And my dad is still my dad." She stood there, shaking, like I'd just committed high treason. "Apologize." "For what?" "For disrespecting this family." I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. Her voice dropped to that cold, quiet tone that always meant she was about to do something drastic. Then you're not going. I laughed because I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. The next morning, she knocked on my door with a printed itinerary and a speech ready. We are not paying for you to come on this trip if you're going to keep insulting the man who provides for you, she said. This is a family vacation. And if you don't want to be part of this family, you can stay here. Fine, I said. I'll stay with Dad. Perfect, she said, and walked out. Greg didn't argue. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. I could tell he hated the idea of leaving me behind, but he wasn't going to fight Clara over it. He packed his bags, checked flight times, and stayed quiet. When the day of the trip came, I stood on the porch as the taxi pulled up. Clara didn't say goodbye. Greg gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, maybe next time. And then they were gone, off to Florida to build the perfect family narrative without the one person refusing to read from the script. I spent Christmas with Dad. It wasn't glamorous. We ate Chinese takeout and watched bad holiday movies on cable, but it was easy, honest. No one corrected how I referred to anyone. No one demanded scripted speeches or staged photos. Meanwhile, Clara's vacation was plastered all over social media. There were pictures of them smiling in front of palm trees, Greg wearing Mickey ears, Clara holding her pregnant belly like a trophy. The captions were nauseating. Our perfect little family, stronger than ever. Best Christmas yet with the people who matter most. The people who mattered most. That part stung more than I expected. A week later, the family Christmas card arrived in the mail. Glossy photo of Greg and Clara on the beach, her bump front and center. Wishing you love from our growing family. My name wasn't anywhere on it. I tossed it in the trash. When they came back, no one mentioned the trip. Clara didn't ask how my Christmas was. Greg didn't bring me a souvenir. It was as if the week had been erased from the official family record. The tension was thicker than ever, but there was a new layer underneath it. Something sharper and colder. I'd drawn a line, and so had they. And now we were standing on opposite sides, pretending not to notice the canyon forming between us. The Florida trip was supposed to fix everything. Instead, it detonated whatever was left. When they came back, the house felt different. Not colder, exactly, but hollow. Like someone had taken the structure apart and put it back together slightly wrong. No one mentioned the trip. No one mentioned me. We just lived in the same space, orbiting around the silence. Then, the real war began. About 3 weeks after Christmas, a letter arrived from a lawyer. David was filing for a custody review. His argument was simple. I'd been emotionally harmed by my mother's behavior. He had therapist notes, screenshots of texts, and statements from school counselors. One of the documents claimed I felt unsafe in Greg's home. That wasn't exactly true. Unwanted would have been more accurate, but in legal language, unsafe sounded better. Clara's reaction was predictable. Nuclear. This is your father's doing, she said, pacing the kitchen, waving the papers around. He's manipulating you. He's trying to destroy this family. I shrugged. Maybe the family destroyed itself. She slammed the counter. Do you have any idea how much we've done for you? How much Greg has sacrificed? I didn't answer. I'd learned that silence was more effective than any argument. The custody hearing wasn't immediate. Those things never are. But David wasted no time building a case. My therapist's report mentioned verbal hostility and feelings of alienation. Emails Clara had sent me, the ones where she called Dad a useless paycheck and said I'd regret choosing him, were submitted as evidence. And the text she sent after banning me from the trip, the one that said, "Enjoy your holiday with your absentee father," was now officially part of a legal record. Clara spiraled. She started texting constantly, sometimes 30 messages in a day. If I didn't reply, she'd show up at Dad's house unannounced, standing on the porch with a casserole and a lecture. Once, she brought a folder full of receipts, school fees, medical bills, grocery costs, and laid them out on the table like evidence in a trial. Maybe your father will finally pay for something, she said, before slamming the door behind her. Her social life collapsed too. Word had spread about the Florida incident, and people she'd known for years started ghosting her. Church friends stopped replying to her messages. A parent group she ran quietly removed her as admin. Clara responded the only way she knew how, by doubling down online. She posted long rants about ungrateful children and deadbeat dads, each one more desperate than the last. Meanwhile, Greg was unraveling in his own quiet way. He'd stopped trying to mediate between us. At first, he'd say things like, "Let's all calm down," or "Maybe we should listen to each other." Now he just came home from work, ate in silence, and disappeared into the spare room. After a few weeks, that became permanent. He moved into the guest room full-time. I didn't care at first, But one night I overheard an argument in the kitchen. Clara was crying. Greg's voice was low but steady. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "You can't leave now," she said. "Not after everything we've built." "Built?" He laughed bitterly. "We haven't built anything. You've been at war with a 14-year-old, Clara. And for what? A word?" "It's not a word," she snapped. "It's about respect." "No," Greg said. "It's about control, and I'm done being part of it." The next morning, his side of the bed was empty for good. At first, for good just meant the guest room. He'd sleep there, leave early for work, come home late. We'd pass each other in the hallway like roommates with a bad lease. But 2 weeks after Ivy was born, I came home from school and his truck wasn't in the driveway. His clothes were gone from the guest room closet. The bathroom shelf where he kept his shaving kit was empty. Clara didn't say anything about it. Neither did I. He just left, moved to his parents' place, and started the paperwork. The house started to feel like a waiting room. Quiet, sterile, temporary. Clara was either on the phone with her lawyer or pacing the hallway muttering about alienation and manipulation. She still sent me texts every day, alternating between guilt trips and threats. One day it was, "I hope you're proud of what you're doing to this family." The next it was, "You'll regret choosing him over us." I stopped replying altogether. I stopped visiting too. Whenever she asked why, I told her I was busy. School, soccer, homework. The truth was simpler. I just didn't want to be there. By the time spring came, the custody hearing was set, the family was fractured, and no one was pretending anymore. Clara still believed she could force the world to bend to her version of reality. I'd stopped believing anything she said. And Greg? Well, Greg had quietly exited the battlefield. All that was left was the wreckage. And we hadn't even hit the worst of it yet. Ivy was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in late spring. I wasn't at the hospital. Greg was, technically. He'd been staying at his parents' house by then, answering Clara's texts with single words and avoiding the house entirely. But when labor started, he showed up, did his duty, stayed through the delivery, held the baby for exactly 3 minutes, and left before Clara could turn it into a reconciliation scene. No flowers, no photos, no celebration. When I heard Ivy had arrived, my first reaction wasn't joy. It was relief. Relief that maybe now Clara would focus on someone other than me. But that hope lasted about 5 minutes. She called that evening, voice shaking between anger and desperation. "Your sister's here," she said. "Do you even care?" "Of course I care," I said. "I just don't know what you want from me. I want you to be part of this family before it's too late." Too late had come and gone months ago. Clara brought Ivy home to a silent house. No family waiting, no balloons, no welcome home signs. Just the echo of everything that had gone wrong. Then the court ruling arrived. David was granted temporary custody while the legal process played out. I was to live with him full-time until a final decision was made. Clara called it a betrayal. I called it a vacation. Packing my things was less dramatic than I expected. Clara cried the entire time, pacing the doorway as I folded clothes into a duffel bag. "You're abandoning us," she said, "after everything we've done." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said. "I'm just leaving." "What about your sister? You're going to walk away from her too? She doesn't even know I exist. She needs you. She needs parents who aren't fighting with a teenager." When I zipped up the bag, she tried one last tactic. "We paid for your braces, your school, your soccer trips. This is how you repay us?" "Pretty sure you didn't do any of that for repayment," I said. "And Greg paid for most of it anyway." She slapped the wall, tears streaking down her face. "You're just like your father." "Good," I said, and walked out. David didn't celebrate when I moved in. He just cleared a drawer for my stuff and asked if I wanted pizza. For the first time in years, the air around me felt light. I didn't realize how heavy that house had been, until I was out of it. Greg filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Irreconcilable differences, the papers said. That was one way to describe a war zone. Clara didn't talk about it directly, but the evidence of her unraveling was everywhere. She started showing up at my soccer games, standing on the sidelines and yelling my name. Not cheers, accusations. "This isn't over, Liam. You'll regret this one day. Family isn't something you run from." My coach asked if she needed to be removed. I said no. It was easier to ignore her than to explain. Then came the emails. Long, rambling midnight messages, with subject lines like "you don't understand" or "read this before you hate me forever." They always followed the same pattern. Pages of emotional manipulation, twisted memories, and dramatic declarations about how broken the family was without me. Sometimes she threatened to take David back to court. Sometimes she claimed Greg had begged her to forgive him. He hadn't. Sometimes she sent old photos of us at birthday parties, hoping nostalgia would do what guilt hadn't. I stopped reading them after a while. The final straw came one Saturday when she showed up at my new school uninvited. I was in the cafeteria when she appeared at the door, demanding to see me. Security had to walk her out. That afternoon, David filed for a restraining order. It wasn't a dramatic courtroom scene like on TV. It was a simple form and a short hearing. Clara didn't contest it. The house on Maple Street was empty now. Greg had moved out permanently. The Hollises stopped speaking to Clara entirely. Most of her friends had vanished. Even her church group distanced themselves. It was just her and Ivy, locked inside the echo chamber of her own bitterness. I wish I could say I felt guilty, but the truth is, I didn't. I felt sad, sure. Sad that it had come to this. That someone who once held the world together now couldn't even hold a conversation without it turning into a battle. But guilt? Number. Guilt would have meant I thought I'd done something wrong. The truth was simpler. I'd spent years trying to be the son she wanted, and when I stopped trying, she fell apart. That wasn't my fault. The first time I saw Ivy after the custody ruling, she was asleep in a stroller. Clara didn't speak to me and I didn't try. We stood there in silence. Two people who shared blood but nothing else. She looked smaller than I expected. Not just Ivy, but Clara too. The woman who once controlled everything now looked like someone who'd lost control of herself. I left without saying goodbye. By summer, the divorce was finalized. Greg sold the house and moved 3 towns over. The custody case was leaning heavily in David's favor. And Clara? She was still sending emails. Fewer now, but still coming. The last one I read was short. Just a single sentence. One day you'll realize I was right. Maybe she believed that. Maybe she needed to. But by then it didn't matter. The war she'd been fighting was over. She'd won nothing. Lost everything. And I was no longer a soldier in her campaign. A baby sister who would grow up hearing her mother's version of the story long before she ever heard mine. Clara appealed. It failed within a month. Word spread through town. Some people treated me like a victim. Others whispered that I'd abandoned my mother. Teachers gave me pitying looks. Classmates asked questions I didn't answer. Meanwhile, Greg was already moving on. He moved into a condo closer to his job, started dating again, and by the end of the year, he was engaged to a woman named Erin. She was everything Clara wasn't. Calm, understated, allergic to drama. They married quietly in a courthouse ceremony. No matching t-shirts required. Clara lost her mind when she found out. He replaced us like we were nothing, she said during one of her calls, her voice shaking. He replaced you. I didn't bother reminding her that I'd never been his to replace. At one of my soccer games, she appeared on the sidelines, screaming at David across the field. "You're poisoning him against me," she shouted. "You think you can erase me?" The ref paused the match while staff led her away. My teammates stared. My coach asked if everything was okay. I told him, "So yeah, that's just my mom," and went back to the game. After that, David got a court order restricting her from contacting the school or attending events without permission. Clara called it proof that we were conspiring against her. I called it peace and quiet. Months passed. Life started to settle into something that almost felt normal. David and I took a road trip that summer. Nothing special, just a few days driving up the coast with no schedule and too many snacks. It was the first time in years that I'd spent that much uninterrupted time with him. He didn't lecture me or try to make deep conversations happen. We just drove, talked about dumb stuff, and laughed at the same stupid radio ads. For the first time, I realized that this was what family could look like when no one was trying to win. The final attempt came a few weeks before the restraining order went into full effect. She said she wanted to talk, just the 3 of us. Her, me, and Ivy. Against my better judgment, I agreed. David thought it was a bad idea, but I needed to see for myself if anything had changed. It hadn't. I walked into the restaurant and found not just Clara and Ivy, but also her sister and a woman I didn't recognize, probably from her estranged parents' support group. It wasn't a dinner. It was an ambush. Clara started in immediately. "I need you to tell them how your father has manipulated you. I need you to be honest." I laughed. This was a mistake. "You owe me this," she said, loud enough for people at nearby tables to turn and stare. "You owe this family the truth." I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table for my soda, and walked out. That ambush dinner was the last straw. 2 days later, David went back to court and got the restraining order expanded. No contact, no surprise appearances, no more games. By the end of that year, Clara was living alone with Ivy in a small apartment on the edge of town. She'd cut her hair, deleted her social media accounts, and joined a support group for estranged parents. Greg and Erin had bought a house in the suburbs. David and I had a routine that worked. My grades were steady. My room at Dad's place actually looked lived in. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was stable. And stability was something I hadn't felt in years. The story wasn't finished. There was still one person left to complicate it. Someone who hadn't had a say yet. And her name was Ivy. I was 24, working nights at a warehouse and pretending I liked the quiet when the message arrived. Hi, I think I'm your sister. My name is Ivy. Mom says I shouldn't write you, so I'm writing you. No emoji. No punctuation besides the period she earned. The account looked real. 2 kids on a playground, a lopsided cake, a cat that hated cameras. I stared at the screen long enough to feel foolish and answered with the least poetic truth I had. Hi, Ivy. I'm Liam. I'm your brother, she replied an hour later. We're doing a school play on Friday. It's at 6. You don't have to come. I just thought maybe you could sit in the back and not tell anyone it's you. It was the first invitation I'd gotten from that side of the family that didn't come with a trapdoor. I told her I'd be there. Friday came cold and gray. The school was the kind with scuffed floors and a long bulletin board of kindness goals. I bought a ticket, took a program, and sat as far back as possible. The auditorium filled with parents who knew where to sit without being told. I kept my head down. Greg walked in first with a woman I recognized from photos. Aaron, the upgrade pack. He looked older, more gray, softer around the jaw, the kind of tired that comes from deciding not to fight storms anymore. The Hollises trailed behind them, still crisp, still certain. And then Clara arrived. She'd cut her hair short and sensible. The coat looked expensive. Her eyes did not. She scanned the seats like someone who expects an enemy and finds only strangers. For a moment I wondered if she would spot me anyway. She didn't. Ivy tugged her hand and pointed to the stage, excited. Clara nodded, small and mechanical. The play was about winter animals learning to share berries. Low stakes, high squeakiness. Ivy appeared as a fox with felt ears and a tail that refused to cooperate. She delivered her lines with the kind of concentration usually reserved for bomb disposal. When she was done, she looked into the crowd. Her eyes moved past me, paused, then moved on. Smart kid. She'd said, "Don't tell anyone." I didn't. Greg clapped the way men clap when they're relieved the hard part is over. Erin beamed like she'd built the fox herself. Clara clapped late, then too long. The curtain fell. Parents stood. Chaos began. I waited until the room thinned out, then slipped into the hallway where student art tried to make fluorescent lights look friendly. Ivy rounded the corner like she'd trained for this. "You came," she said, out of breath. "I said I would," I said. We stood there, not hugging. She smelled like craft glue and stage dust. Up close, she had David's eyes and the rest split evenly between everybody else who'd made this mess. "I wanted to meet you before anyone told me I shouldn't," she said. "That's a good rule. You look like Mom around the eyebrows," she said. Clinical, unafraid. "I try not to." She smiled. "Quick, gone." "I can't stay long," she said. "They'll notice. I just wanted to see if you were real." "I am, unfortunately." A door opened behind her. Greg stepped into the hall and stopped. We looked at each other like two people recognizing a house from a bad dream. Aaron hovered a step back, reading the air. Greg didn't move closer. "Points for that." "Hey," he said. Simple, civil. "Hey," I said. No speeches, no demands. Ivy looked between us like a referee checking pockets for weapons. Greg nodded once. The exact nod you give a driver who lets you merge. I gave it back. That was all. "I should go," Ivy said. "But I'm glad you came." "Me too," I said. "Break a leg." Retroactively. She frowned. "That's weird." "It is." She grinned and ran. Greg watched her go like a man who had learned to be careful with joy. Then he looked at me again. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm fine." Good. He could have said more. I could have too. We didn't. He returned to his row of safe people. I slipped out the side door. Outside, the air was clean and cold. I stood by the bike racks and tried not to turn the whole thing into a metaphor. It was just a school play. A kid waved at a statue of a fox. A mother told a toddler to stop eating snow. Life continued at its usual stubborn pace. At home, I wrote a letter I knew I wouldn't send. I wrote it to Greg because that was easier than writing it to Clara. "You were never my father. You didn't ask to be, and I sure didn't volunteer. But you showed up. You paid for things I didn't notice, and stood there while the adults turned our kitchen into a court. That counts, whether I said it then or not. I didn't call you Dad. You didn't need me to. Maybe that's the most important part." I folded the paper, put it in a drawer, and fed the cat. He resented me less than usual. Progress. Clara emailed me 3 days later. The subject line said, "Enough. The body was short. I know you were there. don't make this worse. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to win, because there was nothing left to argue about. She'd drawn a map where the only road to love ran through a single word. I'd taken the frontage road and found out it got me to the same town without the tolls. A week after the play, a card showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photo of Ivy on the stage, fox ears crooked, mouth midline. On the back, in careful letters, she'd written, "That was me. Thanks for coming." I put it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pineapple. Hospitality or a joke. Either way, it worked. June came. Father's Day lugged itself onto the calendar like a couch up a staircase. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, thinking about all the words I could write to the men who had held parts of my life. I didn't write most of them. To David, I sent a photo from the road trip and typed, "Next summer, longer drive, worse music." To Greg, I typed and deleted 3 drafts. Then I wrote the thing that fit. "Thank you." No signature, no explanation. A message that could land or miss or vanish in the static. He didn't respond that day. But 2 weeks later, a package showed up. No note, just my old soccer cleats I'd left at the house years ago, cleaned and relaced. I didn't need them anymore. That wasn't the point. That night, I took Ivy's photo off the fridge and slid it into the drawer with the unsent letter. 2 artifacts. Not peace, exactly. Not closure. Just proof. People say the word dad is sacred. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I spent years treating it like a landmine, and year after that pretending the field was empty. Now it feels like a key that opens some doors and not others. You can hand it to someone. You can keep it in your pocket. The house is still the house. I locked up, turned off the kitchen light, and listened to the building settle around me. Somewhere in town, a fox costume was probably stuffed into a plastic bin, waiting for the next kid to try it on and make it mean something. Good luck to them. You can't demand the word. You can only earn it, lose it, or live without it. For the first time in years, all 3 options felt fine. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. My parents invited me to a fancy family dinner, but told me to sit at the kids' table while my married younger sibs sat with the adults. I quietly picked up my stuff and left. Hours later, they were desperately calling me. I'm 32, single, and apparently still considered a child by my parents, despite having a master's degree, owning my own home, and running a successful freelance consulting business. This story happened 3 weeks ago, but I'm still processing the absolute audacity of my family. Some background first. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My sister Emma is 30 and married with 2 kids. My brother Jake is 28, married with 1 kid on the way. My youngest brother Tyler is 26, just got married 6 months ago. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. Good grades, never got in trouble, helped with the younger kids, worked part-time through high school and college. My parents always treated me like the built-in babysitter and homework helper, but somehow never quite saw me as an actual adult with my own life and achievements. Meanwhile, my siblings got away with everything. Emma barely graduated high school, got pregnant at 22, and has never held a job longer than 6 months. Jake dropped out of college twice before finally finishing with a communications degree he's never used. Tyler spent his early 20s partying and living off my parents before suddenly deciding to get married to a girl he'd known for 8 months. But here's the thing that's always driven me crazy. The moment each of them got married, they were suddenly treated like mature adults deserving of respect. Emma became the family expert on everything the moment she popped out her first kid. Jake's opinion started mattering the second he put a ring on his girlfriend's finger. And Tyler, who literally moved back in with our parents after college and stayed there until his wedding day, is now treated like some wise patriarch because he has a wife. Me? I'm still just good old reliable single Sarah, who clearly hasn't figured out her life yet. I've built my consulting business from nothing into something that lets me work with Fortune 500 companies. I own a 3-bedroom house in a great neighborhood. I travel internationally for both work and pleasure. I have a robust social life, volunteer with local literacy programs, and I'm genuinely happy with my life. But because I haven't found the right person to marry yet, my family treats me like I'm somehow incomplete or immature. The dinner invitation came via a group text to all us kids. Mom was planning what she called a sophisticated family dinner to celebrate Tyler and his wife Melissa's 6-month anniversary. She specifically mentioned it would be elegant and adult-focused, since Tyler was really coming into his own as a married man. I almost didn't go. These family gatherings have become increasingly uncomfortable for me over the past few years. But Tyler's actually my favorite sibling. even though he's the youngest. And I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally treat me like the adult I am. I should have known better. I showed up at my parents' house dressed nicely in a black dress and heels, carrying a bottle of expensive wine for Tyler and Melissa. The house was decorated like they were hosting a dinner party for important guests. Mom had used her good china, lit candles everywhere, and even hired a catering service instead of cooking herself. This was definitely the fanciest family dinner we'd ever had. Emma and her husband Brad were already there with their kids, 7-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Mason. Jake and his very pregnant wife Chelsea had arrived just before me. Tyler and Melissa were dressed like they were going to a country club. Everyone was mingling in the living room with cocktails. "Sarah," Mom exclaimed when she saw me. "Oh, good, you're here. Can you help me with something in the kitchen?" I followed her to the kitchen, where she was fussing with appetizer platters. "This looks amazing, Mom. You really went all out." "Well, Tyler deserves it. He's really become such a mature young man. Marriage has been so good for him." She paused, giving me one of those looks. "You know, honey, Melissa has a brother who's single. Very successful lawyer. Maybe we could arrange—" "Mom, please. Not tonight." I'd heard variations of this conversation 100 times. My successful single life apparently reflects poorly on her as a mother. I'm just saying, you're not getting any younger. Emma was already married with one baby by your age. Don't you want what she has? I looked through the doorway at Emma, who was letting her kids run wild through the living room while she ignored them, and complained to Chelsea about how tired she was. Her husband Brad was already on his third beer, and it wasn't even 6 p.m. yet. "I'm happy with my life, Mom. Can we please just enjoy tonight?" She sighed dramatically. "Well, I suppose. Oh, I need to tell you about the seating arrangement. I've put a lot of thought into this to make it special." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "Okay. Well, since this is such a sophisticated dinner, I've arranged the seating to be appropriate. The adults will sit at the main dining room table, and you'll be at the little table in the breakfast nook with Lily and Mason." I stared at her. "I'm sorry, what?" "It's perfect, really. You're so good with children, and this way the married couples can have adult conversation without the kids interrupting. I've already set your place." My face went hot. "Mom, I'm 32 years old." "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's just seating. Besides, someone needs to watch the children so the adults can enjoy their dinner." The adults? I felt like I'd been slapped. My younger siblings, who I'd helped raise, who had come to me for advice throughout their teens and early 20s, were adults while I was relegated to the kids' table like a teenage cousin. "Where exactly are you planning to seat everyone else?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, your father and I will sit at the heads of the table, of course. Tyler and Melissa will sit on one side, Emma and Brad on the other, and Jake and Chelsea across from them. It'll be perfect for adult conversation about marriages and careers and future plans." I had a master's degree in business administration and ran my own company. I'd been financially independent since I was 24. I owned property and paid taxes and voted and had a 401k. But I wasn't married, so I got demoted to children's table supervisor. "And what if I don't want to sit with the kids?" I asked quietly. Mom looked confused, like the thought hadn't even occurred to her. "But who will watch them? Emma and Brad deserve to enjoy their dinner without worrying about the children. And besides, you're not married, so it's not like you have much to contribute to the conversation anyway." That last sentence hit me like a physical blow. Not much to contribute. Because I hadn't found a spouse, my education, career success, life experiences, and opinions were somehow worthless. I nodded slowly. "I see. And this was your plan all along?" "Well, yes. I thought it was quite clever, actually. This way everyone gets what they need. Everyone except me, apparently." I walked back into the living room, where my siblings were all chatting and laughing with their spouses. The kids were now jumping on the furniture, while Emma scrolled through her phone, completely ignoring them. Tyler was telling some story about his new job that had everyone's attention. I looked at the dining room, where Mom had indeed set a beautiful table for 8 adults. Then I looked toward the breakfast nook, where 3 place settings sat at the small round table, normally used for quick casual meals. A children's placemat with cartoon animals sat next to my regular plate. The symbolism was hard to miss. I walked back into the living room and quietly approached Tyler. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure, what's up?" I pulled him aside. "Did you know about the seating arrangement Mom planned?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "She wants me to sit at the kids' table with Lily and Mason, while all of you sit at the adult table." Tyler's face went through several expressions before settling on uncomfortable. "Oh, I didn't know the specifics, but she did mention something about you helping with the kids during dinner." And you were okay with that? He shifted uncomfortably. I mean, you are really good with them. And it's just one dinner. Just one dinner. Like this wasn't part of a pattern that had been building for years. Tyler, I'm 4 years older than you. I know, but he trailed off, clearly not wanting to say what we both knew he was thinking. I wasn't married, so I didn't count as a real adult in the family hierarchy. I nodded. Right. Well, congratulations on your 6-month anniversary. I hope you have a wonderful dinner. I walked back to the kitchen, where Mom was putting finishing touches on the appetizers. Mom, I need to head out. She looked up, startled. What? But dinner's about to be served. I told you, you're sitting with the children. Yes, you did tell me that. Which is exactly why I'm leaving. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. Someone needs to supervise them. Then I suggest one of their parents do it. You know, the people who are actually responsible for them. Her face hardened. You're being very selfish right now. This dinner is important for Tyler and Melissa. You're right, it is important, which is why you should probably focus on actually including your family, instead of treating one of your children like hired help. I walked back through the living room, where everyone was still chatting. No one seemed to notice I was leaving. I grabbed my purse and the bottle of wine I'd brought. Sarah? Tyler called out as I reached the front door. Where are you going? Home. Enjoy your sophisticated adult dinner. Wait, but you haven't eaten yet? I turned back to face the room. Everyone was now looking at me. I wasn't invited to eat with the family. I was invited to be the unpaid babysitter. So I'm declining. Emma finally looked up from her phone. What's she talking about? Mom wanted me to sit at the kids' table while you all had your adult dinner, I said calmly. The room went quiet. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Brad took another drink. Chelsea looked confused. That's kind of messed up, Tyler said quietly. Is it? I asked. Because none of you seemed to have a problem with it when I mentioned it to Tyler 5 minutes ago. Mom came bustling out of the kitchen. Sarah, stop making a scene. It's just seating arrangements. It's not just seating arrangements, Mom. It's how you see me. How this entire family sees me. I looked around the room. I have a master's degree. I own my own business. I own my own home. I pay my own bills. I've been completely independent for almost a decade. But because I don't have a husband, I'm somehow still a child who gets relegated to supervising other people's kids while the real adults have dinner. Now you're being dramatic, Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Emma dropped out of college and has never held a steady job, but she gets treated like an adult because she's married. Jake bounced between majors and jobs for years, but he's worthy of adult conversation because he has a wife. Tyler lived with you until he was 26, but suddenly he's mature enough to sit at the big kid table because he got married. What exactly have any of them accomplished that I haven't, besides finding someone willing to marry them? The silence was deafening. That's not fair, Emma said weakly. Isn't it? When's the last time anyone in this family asked about my career? My travels? My goals? When's the last time anyone treated my opinions as valid? But I'm supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to watch your kids, while you all discuss your marriages and your futures, because apparently I don't have one worth discussing. Lily chose that moment to run over and tug on my dress. Aunt Sarah, are you coming to eat with us? I knelt down to her eye level. Not tonight, sweetie, but you be good for your mom and dad, okay? But who's going to sit with us? Mason asked, appearing beside his sister. Your parents will take care of you. That's their job. I stood back up and faced my family one more time. I'm going home. When you decide you'd like to treat me like the adult I am, feel free to call me. I walked out the door and drove home, hands shaking with anger and hurt. I'd been dealing with this dynamic for years, but having it made so explicit, so deliberately insulting, was more than I could take. I got home, changed into comfortable clothes, ordered Thai food, and opened a bottle of wine. I turned off my phone and watched Netflix on my couch, in my house, surrounded by my things, in my life that I'd built entirely by myself. Around 9 p.m., I turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The first call had come from Tyler about 30 minutes after I left. Then Emma, then Jake, then Mom, then Dad, then Tyler again. The pattern repeated for hours. The text messages were a journey. Tyler, 6:47 p.m. Hey, can we talk? Dinner was really awkward after you left. Emma, 7:03 p.m. Okay, I talked to Mom about what happened, and I think there might have been a misunderstanding. Jake, 7:15 p.m. Dude, Mom is freaking out. She says you ruined Tyler's dinner. What happened? Mom, 7:22 p.m. Sarah, you embarrassed me in front of Melissa's family and ruined Tyler's special dinner. Call me immediately. Dad, 7:35 p.m. Your mother is very upset. I think you owe everyone an apology. Tyler, 7:41 p.m. Look, I'm sorry about the seating thing. Can you just call mom back? She's crying and saying the whole dinner was ruined. Emma, 7:58 p.m. The kids kept asking where you were. Mom had to sit with them and she was not happy about it. This made me laugh out loud. So when mom had to actually parent her grandchildren during dinner, suddenly the seating arrangement was a problem. Jake, 8:14 p.m. Chelsea says what mom did was messed up and she's right. But can you please just call back so we can fix this? Mom, 8:23 p.m. I cannot believe you would be so selfish and inconsiderate. Do you have any idea how hard I worked on this dinner? Dad, 8:31 p.m. Sarah, your mother spent all day preparing this dinner for the family. The least you could do is call her back. Tyler, 8:47 p.m. Melissa feels really bad about this. She says if she had known mom was planning to make you sit with the kids, she would have said something. Please call me back. Emma, 8:52 p.m. Okay, so I might not have fully understood what happened before, but Chelsea explained it, and wow, that was really messed up. But mom is like really upset. Jake, 9:01 p.m. Can you please just call someone back? Mom is talking about driving to your house. That last message prompted me to finally respond. Me, 9:03 p.m. Do not come to my house. I'll call Tyler in 10 minutes. I called Tyler, who answered on the first ring. Thank God. Look, I'm sorry about what happened. I honestly didn't realize how messed up the whole thing was until after you left. What exactly happened after I left? Tyler sighed. Well, mom expected you to come back, so she kept waiting to serve dinner. When it became clear you weren't coming back, she completely lost it. She kept saying you embarrassed her in front of Melissa and that you ruined our celebration. And what did you say? At first, I was just trying to keep the peace, you know? But then Melissa asked me to explain exactly what happened. And when I told her about the kids' table thing, she was horrified. She said if her family ever did something like that to one of her siblings, she'd walk out too. Interesting. Tyler's new wife had more sense than his entire birth family. So, what happened with dinner? Well, mom had to sit with Lily and Mason since Emma refused to leave the adult table. And the kids were being kids, you know? They were loud and messy and kept interrupting. Mom was getting more and more frustrated, especially because Lily kept asking where you were and why you left. And about halfway through dinner, Melissa asked mom why she thought it was appropriate to treat you like a babysitter instead of a family member. Mom got defensive and said someone had to watch the kids. Melissa pointed out that their parents were literally sitting right there. I was starting to like this, Melissa. Then what? Then Emma finally said maybe one of them should sit with the kids instead. And mom completely lost it. She started crying and saying that you had ruined everything and that she'd worked so hard to make this dinner special. Chelsea pointed out that maybe if she'd included you in the dinner, instead of treating you like help, you wouldn't have left. Good for Chelsea. Yeah. And then Jake said he never really thought about it before. But it was pretty messed up how you always get treated differently because you're not married. Dad tried to defend mom, but honestly, even he seemed to realize how bad it looked. So what's the situation now? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Mom wants you to apologize for embarrassing her and ruining the dinner. Dad thinks you should just call her and smooth things over. Emma and Jake think mom owes you an apology, but they want everyone to just move on and pretend it didn't happen. And what do you think? I think Melissa is right. What mom did was really messed up, and you had every right to leave. I also think I should have said something when you told me about it instead of just going along with it. This was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from Tyler. Maybe marriage really had matured him. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. I appreciate that. So what do you want to happen now? I want to be treated like an adult member of this family, instead of like the family disappointment or unpaid babysitter. I want my accomplishments to be acknowledged and valued. I want my life choices to be respected even if they're different from everyone else's. That seems reasonable. Does it? Because based on the messages I got tonight, it seems like everyone thinks I'm the problem for not just sucking it up and sitting at the kids' table like a good little single woman. Tyler was quiet again. No, you're right. And I'll talk to them. Melissa already said she's going to say something to mom next time she sees her. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I felt slightly better knowing that at least Tyler and his wife understood why I'd left, but I wasn't holding my breath for any real changes. I didn't call my parents back that night, or the next day, or the day after that. By Thursday, the calls had intensified. Mom had left 3 voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. In the first one, she was angry. By the third one, she was crying and begging me to call her back. Dad left a message saying I was being stubborn and hurtful and needed to think about the family. Emma sent a long text about how the kids missed me and didn't understand why I wasn't coming around anymore. Jake called and left a message saying he'd been thinking about our conversation at Christmas last year when I'd mentioned feeling excluded from family stuff, and he was starting to understand what I meant. But it was Tyler's text that finally got to me. Melissa and I want to take you to dinner this weekend. Just the 3 of us. She wants to apologize for not speaking up during the dinner planning, and I want to apologize for not having your back when I should have. Would Saturday work? I agreed to dinner with Tyler and Melissa. We went to a nice restaurant downtown, and I immediately understood why Tyler had fallen for her. She was smart, funny, and had clearly been thinking a lot about what had happened. I have to tell you, she said after we'd ordered. I was absolutely mortified when Tyler explained the seating arrangement to me. In my family, that would never happen. It's been a pattern for a long time, I admitted. I just finally hit my limit. Tyler told me some stories about growing up, and I can see why. The way he described it, you basically raised him and his siblings while your parents treated you like a live-in nanny. Tyler looked uncomfortable. I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, that's kind of what happened. Sarah was always the one helping us with homework, driving us places, mediating our fights with mom and dad. But the minute each of you got married, you suddenly became the adults in the family while Sarah remained the responsible child, Melissa continued. It's honestly bizarre. It is bizarre, I agreed. And what really gets me is that none of my accomplishments seem to matter. I've built a successful business, I own my home, I'm financially stable, I travel, I have great friends. But because I haven't found a husband, I'm somehow still seen as immature and irresponsible. Which is crazy, Tyler said. You're literally the most successful person in our family. This was the first time any of my siblings had ever acknowledged that. So what can we do to fix this? Melissa asked. I honestly don't know if it can be fixed, I said. This isn't just about one dinner. It's about years of being treated like I'm less than because my life looks different from what my parents expected. Tyler was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, I've been thinking about this a lot since Saturday night. I think Mom has this idea in her head about what success looks like for women. And since you don't fit that model, she doesn't know how to categorize you. So she categorizes me as a failure. Yeah, basically. And I think she's doubled down on it because admitting she's wrong would mean admitting she's treated you unfairly for years. Which she has. Which she definitely has. Melissa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, Tyler talks about you all the time. How proud he is of what you've accomplished. How much you helped him when he was younger. How much you've taught him about work and life. You've had a huge positive impact on his life. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. That means a lot. I want you to know that going forward, Melissa and I are going to make sure you're treated fairly at family stuff, Tyler said. No more kids' tables. No more being voluntold to babysit. No more dismissive comments about your life choices. I appreciate that, but I don't need you to protect me. I need the family to actually change how they see me. Then that's what we'll work on. We had a good dinner, and I felt hopeful for the first time in days. Tyler seemed to genuinely understand the problem, and Melissa was a good influence on him. But I still didn't call my parents. Friday morning, I got a call from an unknown local number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sarah, this is Melissa's mom, Carol. I hope you don't mind that Tyler gave me your number. I was confused. No, that's fine. Is everything okay? Well, I'll be honest with you. Melissa told me what happened at your family dinner last weekend, and I'm calling to invite you to our family dinner this Sunday. Melissa thought you might like to see how a family dinner should go. I was touched but also hesitant. That's very kind of you, but I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be imposing. We'd love to have you, and I think you might enjoy it. We actually treat all of our adult children like adults, regardless of their marital status. The gentle shade in that comment made me laugh. I'd love to come. Wonderful. Tyler has our address. Come around 5 and don't bring anything but yourself. Sunday dinner with Melissa's family was a revelation. They had 4 kids, ranging in age from 26 to 34. 2 were married, 2 weren't. But all 4 were treated with equal respect and affection. Carol and her husband asked about everyone's careers, hobbies, travels, and goals. The conversation was lively and inclusive. No one was relegated to children's duty, and when Melissa's brother's kids got restless, both parents took turns handling them. I felt more valued and included in that one dinner with strangers than I had in years of family gatherings with my own relatives. When Tyler dropped me off at home afterward, he said, "That's what family dinner should look like, isn't it?" Yeah, it really is. I'm going to talk to mom and dad this week. This has gone on long enough. Monday morning, I finally decided to check the family group chat that I'd been ignoring for a week. I had 67 unread messages. The progression was fascinating to watch. It started with mom complaining about me ruining Tyler's dinner. Then Emma and Jake weighing in with tepid support for both sides. Then Tyler defending me. Then Melissa joining the chat. Apparently mom had added her, and politely but firmly explaining why what happened was inappropriate. Then things got interesting. Chelsea, Jake's wife, chimed in supporting Melissa. Then Brad, Emma's husband, made some comment about how he'd never thought about it, but I always did seem to get stuck with kid duty at family events. Then Jake admitted he'd been thinking about it and realized how unfair the family dynamics were. The most recent messages were from Saturday night, with mom asking why no one was responding to her anymore, and dad saying the whole family was falling apart. I scrolled back through and read the entire conversation. By the end, mom was isolated in her position that I owed everyone an apology, while Tyler, Melissa, Chelsea, Jake, and even Brad were all saying she owed me one. Emma was notably quiet through most of it, only chiming in occasionally to say she thought everyone should just forgive and forget. I decided not to respond to the group chat, but I did call Jake. "Oh, thank God," he said when he answered. "Are you okay? No one's heard from you all week." "I'm fine. I just needed some space to think. Look, I owe you an apology. Chelsea made me go back and think about every family gathering for the past few years, and she's right. You always get stuck dealing with the kids while the rest of us get to relax and socialize. That's not fair. Thank you for saying that." And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how dismissive we've all been about your life. Like, you have an amazing career and you travel to all these cool places, but we never really ask about any of it. We just assume you're not as fulfilled as us because you're not married. I'm glad you're starting to see it. Chelsea wants me to ask if you'd come to dinner with just us sometime. She says she wants to hear about your business and your travels. Stuff we never talk about at family dinners. I agreed to that as well. It seemed like the conversation was actually sparking some genuine reflection in my siblings. Tuesday evening, Tyler called to warn me that mom and dad were planning to show up at my house. I tried to talk them out of it, but they're convinced you're just being dramatic, and that if they can corner you in person, you'll apologize and everything will go back to normal. When are they coming? Probably tomorrow evening. Dad said something about stopping by after work. Okay, thanks for the heads up. Wednesday evening, right on schedule, my parents showed up at my door. I saw their car pull into my driveway and took a deep breath before answering the doorbell. "Sarah!" Mom exclaimed, as if she was surprised to see me at my own house. "We've been so worried about you." "Hi, Mom." "Dad." Dad looked stern. "We need to talk." "Okay, come in." We sat in my living room, and there was an awkward silence while they looked around. They'd only been to my house a handful of times since I'd bought it, and they always seemed surprised by how nice it was. "You have a lovely home," Mom said, as if she was just noticing it for the first time. "Thank you." Another silence. "Sarah," Dad began, "we're here because this situation has gotten out of hand. Your mother worked very hard on that dinner for Tyler, and walking out the way you did was hurtful and embarrassing." "I see. And what part of the evening do you think I should have handled differently?" Mom jumped in. "You should have just sat where I asked you to sit and helped with the children. It was one dinner. You completely overreacted. So you still think it was appropriate to seat me at the kids' table while my younger siblings sat with the adults?" "It was just practical," Mom insisted. "Someone needed to watch Lily and Mason. Why didn't Emma and Brad watch their own children? Because they deserve to enjoy their dinner without having to worry about the kids. And I didn't deserve to enjoy my dinner?" Mom looked frustrated. "It's different. They're married. They have responsibilities and stress at home. You don't have those same obligations." There it was again. Because I wasn't married, my time, comfort, and dignity were less important than my married siblings. Mom, I want you to think carefully about what you just said. You think Emma and Brad deserve to enjoy their dinner without having to parent their children, but I didn't deserve to enjoy my dinner at all. Instead, I should have been grateful for the opportunity to provide free childcare while the adults had real conversations. You're twisting my words. Am I? Because that's exactly what you arranged. You invited me to a family dinner and then excluded me from the family part while expecting me to work the entire time. Dad jumped in. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. It was just one evening, and you've turned it into this huge thing. It's not just one evening, Dad. It's a pattern. When's the last time either of you asked about my work, my travels, my goals? When's the last time you treated my opinions as valid?" They both looked uncomfortable. When's the last time you were proud of me for something other than how well I handled watching other people's children? Silence. I can tell you when. It was when I graduated college, 11 years ago. Since then, every family conversation has been about Emma's kids, Jake's marriage, Tyler's latest adventure, and what I'm doing wrong by not being married yet. That's not true, Mom said weakly. Isn't it? Last Christmas, I mentioned that I'd been invited to speak at a conference in London. Do you remember what you said? More silence. You said, "That's nice, dear," and then immediately changed the subject to ask Emma about potty training. I had been invited to speak to 500 business executives about strategy consulting, and you dismissed it in favor of discussing toddler bathroom habits. Mom's face was getting red. I didn't mean to dismiss you, but you did, just like you've dismissed me over and over again. And then when I finally stood up for myself, your response was to demand that I apologize for being hurt. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe we haven't been as attentive as we should have been, but you embarrassed your mother in front of Tyler's new wife. That wasn't okay. You're right, Dad. It wasn't okay. What wasn't okay was Mom planning a seating arrangement that would humiliate me in front of Tyler's new wife. What wasn't okay was treating me like hired help instead of like your daughter. What wasn't okay was dismissing my feelings when I tried to express them. So what do you want from us? Mom asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. I want you to see me as an adult. I want my accomplishments to be acknowledged. I want my life choices to be respected. I want to be included in family conversations instead of being assigned babysitting duty. And if we do that, will you forgive us for the dinner? Mom, this isn't about one dinner. This is about years of being treated as less than. If you can genuinely change how you see me and treat me, then yes, we can rebuild our relationship. But if you're just looking for a quick apology so everything can go back to how it was, then no. They left shortly after that, saying they needed to think about what I'd said. I wasn't optimistic about real change, but at least I'd said what I needed to say. Thursday morning, I got a text from Emma asking if we could talk. I called her back during my lunch break. I've been thinking about what happened, she said without preamble, and I think I owe you an apology. Oh, yeah. The more I think about it, the more I realize how often you get stuck watching Lily and Mason at family stuff, and I just let it happen because it was easier for me. I appreciate you saying that. I also never really thought about how differently Mom and Dad treat you. Like, when I got married, suddenly my opinions mattered to them in a way they never had before. I just assumed everyone got the same treatment when they hit certain milestones. But I've hit plenty of milestones. They just weren't the ones Mom and Dad were looking for. Exactly. And that's messed up. Your business is amazing. Your house is beautiful. You travel to incredible places. You've accomplished more than any of us. But because you're not married, it's like none of it counts. This was the most insight I'd ever heard from Emma. What made you start thinking about this? Honestly, Chelsea. After you left the dinner, she was really upset about what happened. She said it reminded her of how her family used to treat her oldest sister, who's also single. She made me realize that I've been complicit in treating you unfairly. I'm glad you're seeing it now. I want to do better. And I want to make sure Lily and Mason understand that Aunt Sarah is not their automatic babysitter. They need to learn that adults deserve respect, regardless of whether they're married or have kids. That would mean a lot to me. Also, I'd love to hear about your business sometime. I don't think I've ever asked you about it properly, and I realized I don't even really understand what you do. We talked for another 20 minutes about my work, and for the first time in years, Emma seemed genuinely interested and impressed. It was a good conversation. Friday afternoon, I got an unexpected call from Dad. I've been thinking about what you said, he began, and I want you to know that your mother and I have been talking. Okay. I want to apologize, not just for the dinner, but for how we've treated you over the years. You were right when you said we haven't been paying attention to your accomplishments or treating you like an adult. I was surprised. Dad doesn't apologize easily. I appreciate that. Your mother is having a harder time with it. She's always had very specific ideas about what makes a successful life for a woman. And when you didn't follow that path, I think she didn't know how to relate to you. So she decided I was a failure instead of expanding her definition of success. Yes, and that was wrong of her. And wrong of me for going along with it. What changed your mind? Dad was quiet for a moment. Tyler came over Tuesday night after you met with him and Melissa. He sat us down and explained some things about how we've been treating you. He was very direct about how unfair we've been. Good for Tyler. He also told us about dinner with Melissa's family, how they treat all their children equally regardless of marital status. It made me realize how differently we've been treating you. And Mom? She's struggling with it. She feels like admitting she was wrong means admitting she's been a bad mother. But she's starting to see it. I hope so. Would you be willing to come to dinner Sunday? Just family, no formal seating arrangements, no expectations that you'll watch anyone's kids? I thought about it. Will mom be able to handle treating me like an adult? I think so. And if she can't, Tyler and I will make sure she does. I agreed to come to Sunday dinner, with the understanding that if anyone tried to hand me a child or dismiss my contributions to conversation, I would leave again. Sunday dinner was better. Not perfect, but better. Mom was clearly making an effort to ask about my work and actually listen to the answers. She still seemed uncomfortable with it, like she was reading from a script, but it was progress. Emma kept her kids at the table with her and Brad. Jake made a point of asking about my recent trip to Portland for a consulting project. Tyler and Melissa helped steer conversations toward topics that included everyone. The biggest moment came when Mom brought up Tyler and Melissa's plans to buy a house. In the past, this would have led to a long discussion about the importance of homeownership for young families, with pointed looks at me about how I should find a husband so I could experience this milestone too. Instead, Dad said, Sarah can probably give you some good advice about the buying process. She's been through it already. It was a small thing, but it acknowledged that I had valuable life experience worth sharing. We're not completely back to normal yet, and I don't know if we ever will be. But for the first time in years, I feel like my family is actually trying to see me as a whole person instead of as their disappointing single daughter. Family kicked me out on my birthday. Now they're trying to claim my new home as a family asset. Hey, I'm Robin, and man, do I have a story for you. I'm 27, and life's been a bit of a mess lately. I work as a marketing assistant, which is not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Well, some of them. I live with my parents and my younger brother Tom in a not-so-great house. The place is cramped, falling apart, and always smells weird, but it's home, or at least it was. Let me start by saying I've been contributing a lot around here. I've been paying a big chunk of the bills, buying groceries, and even handling house repairs when something breaks down. You'd think I'd get a little appreciation for that, right? But nah. Every time I walk into the room, I hear my mom, Susan, talking down to me like I'm some failure. Robin, when are you going to get a real job? She'd say. It's like her favorite line. I mean, what does she even mean by real job? I bust my butt at work. Marketing isn't easy, but in her eyes, because I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, it doesn't count. Every time I try to defend myself, it's the same response. If it was a real job, you'd have your own place by now. Yeah, okay, Mom. And then there's Tom, my 26-year-old brother. We've never really gotten along. He's got this smug attitude, always looking down on me like he's better than I am because he has more followers on social media or whatever. He barely lifts a finger around the house. Guess who picks up the slack? Yep, me. But does anyone care? Nope. Anyway, my 28th birthday was coming up, and I was kind of excited for it despite everything. I know, dumb, right? But I really thought maybe this year would be different. I even saved up and got myself a nice cake from this fancy bakery downtown. I was imagining how we'd have a little celebration. Just the four of us. It wasn't going to be anything big, but I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd actually care. So a few days before, I sat down with my mom and dad, Mark, to talk about it. Hey, I was thinking we could do something for my birthday this weekend. Just, hang out, maybe have some cake, I said, trying to keep my hopes in check. Mom didn't even look up from her magazine. We'll see, Robin. We might have plans. Plans? On my birthday? I should have known something was up, but I didn't want to believe it. I mean, I've been living here my whole life, helping out, working hard. Why would they have plans that didn't include me? Fast forward to my birthday, and I was feeling good. I went to work, got a bunch of happy birthday messages from coworkers, and even treated myself to a new outfit. Things were looking up, right? I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get home and they'd have a little surprise waiting for me. I don't know, a card, a cake, something, anything. But the second I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. My stuff was out on the front lawn. Boxes, bags, my clothes, my books, everything, just thrown out there like trash. I jumped out of the car, my heart pounding, and rushed over to the porch. And there they were, my mom, Dad, and Tom, just standing there staring at me. It was like some twisted family meeting or something. My heart was racing, and I couldn't even think straight. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mom stepped forward, her face cold like she didn't care at all. Robin, it's time for you to move out. You're not welcome here anymore. I stood there, frozen, like I couldn't process what she was saying. Move out? On my birthday? What kind of sick joke was this? I looked at Dad, hoping he'd step in, say something, tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But no. He just stared at the ground, his hands stuffed in his pockets like he couldn't even look at me. I felt this rush of anger and confusion. But it's my birthday! Where am I supposed to go? My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. That's when Tom chimed in, his smirk making me want to scream. Maybe you should have thought about that before being such a burden all these years. A burden? I was the one paying the bills, buying food, keeping this crappy house from falling apart. How was I the burden? I looked at my mom, hoping, begging for some kind of explanation, something that made sense. It wasn't enough, she said, her voice sharp like a slap. We need the space, and frankly, you need to grow up. That was it. No empathy, no second chances, just cold indifference. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them see me break down. Can I at least get my things? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They're all packed, my mom replied, gesturing to the boxes on the lawn like it was no big deal. You should go now. That was it. Happy birthday to me, right? I started loading the boxes into my car, my hands shaking. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask them how they could be so heartless. But I didn't. I just kept moving one box after another, trying to hold myself together. As I finished packing up the last of my things, I turned to look at them one last time, hoping, no, praying that they'd change their minds, that they'd realize how messed up this was. Why today? Why on my birthday? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Mom didn't even blink. Consider it our gift to you. Independence. And just like that, I was gone. On what should have been a day of celebration, I found myself driving away from the only home I'd ever known, with no idea where I was headed. I ended up at some cheap motel, the kind with a flickering neon sign out front, spending my birthday alone, surrounded by my hastily packed belongings. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the people who were supposed to love me could be so cruel. How could they do this to me, their own daughter, on my birthday? That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never rely on them again. I would pick myself up, no matter how hard it got, because clearly I was on my own now. After that whole birthday fiasco, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It wasn't just about getting kicked out, though, yeah, that sucked. It was realizing that the people I thought were supposed to have my back just didn't care. I spent that night in a dingy motel, trying to wrap my head around it all, but there was no making sense of it. So the next day, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into work. I mean, what else was I going to do? I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had bills to pay, and now I needed to find a place to live. My boss, Hannah, noticed pretty quickly that something was off. I was at the office at all hours, hunched over my laptop, answering emails like a robot. She's sharp, and it didn't take long for her to pull me aside. It was late, and the office was practically empty when she found me at my desk. "Robin, can we talk?" she asked, leaning on the edge of my cubicle. I looked up, and I must have looked like a mess because she gave me this concerned look. "You're going to work yourself into the ground at this rate. What's going on?" I didn't want to get into it, but the second she asked, it all just came out. I told her everything, how my family kicked me out, how I was staying in this horrible motel with my stuff still in boxes. As I talked, Hannah's expression softened. She didn't say anything at first, just listened, which was more than my family ever did. When I finished, she let out a sigh and said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I shrugged, feeling embarrassed. I mean, she's my boss, not my therapist, but she didn't seem to mind. "Look, Robin, I have a spare room in my place. It's not much, but you're welcome to stay there until you figure things out." I couldn't believe it. I didn't even know how to respond at first. "Are you serious?" I asked, half expecting her to change her mind or something, but she smiled and nodded. "Of course, I know what it's like to be in a tough spot. Don't worry about it." I was so relieved I almost started crying again, but I managed to hold it together. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." She waved me off. "Don't even mention it. You've been killing it at work, and I'd hate to see you burn out. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." And just like that, I had a place to stay. It wasn't home, but it was something. I packed up my stuff from the motel and moved into Hannah's guest room the next day. It was a little small, but it was clean, warm, and quiet, which was all I needed at that point. The first night there, I sat on the bed just trying to process everything. I felt a little better, but there was still this hole in my chest, like everything I thought I knew had been ripped away. But I didn't let myself wallow for too long. I threw myself into work even harder if that's possible. Hannah wasn't kidding when she said she'd push me harder, but honestly, I appreciated it. It kept me distracted. I took on more freelance gigs too. I figured the more money I could save, the faster I could get out on my own. It wasn't easy, though. There were nights where I stayed up until 3 a.m., just staring at my computer, trying to crank out designs while my mind kept drifting back to my family. I kept thinking, maybe they'd call, maybe they'd apologize, maybe they'd realize they messed up. But no, nothing. Radio silence. During all this, my best friend Mike was a godsend. We'd been friends since college, and even though we weren't living in the same city anymore, we'd always stayed close. I told him what happened, and he was furious. "I can't believe they do that to you," he said during one of our calls. "You deserve better." He wasn't wrong, but it still stung. "Yeah, well, it is what it is," I muttered. "I just got to keep moving forward." Mike, being the joker he is, tried to lighten the mood. "You know what would really piss them off?" he said with a laugh. "You becoming wildly successful and rubbing it in their faces." I laughed, but the idea stuck with me. Not that I wanted revenge or anything. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly I just wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need them. I could make it on my own. So that became my mission. Work harder, save more, and eventually get out of Hannah's guest room and into a place of my own. Over the next few months, things started looking up. My designs were getting noticed by bigger clients, and I was bringing in more money than I ever had. I kept telling myself that every late night, every all-nighter was worth it. And honestly, it was. Slowly but surely, I was rebuilding my life, one project at a time. I started to feel like maybe I didn't need my family after all. Sure, it hurt, and it probably always would, but I was proving to myself that I could survive without them. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and that felt good. One day, Hannah pulled me into her office with this huge grin on her face. "Robin, I've got some good news," she said. "How does a lead designer sound to you?" With a raise, of course. I was speechless. "Are you serious?" I blurted out, feeling like I might pass out from excitement. "Dead serious," she said, still grinning. "You've earned it. You've been doing incredible work, and it's time to recognize that." I couldn't believe it. Lead designer? Me? I felt like all the hard work, all the sleepless nights, all the stress, it was finally paying off. "Thank you," I managed to say, still in shock. "Don't thank me yet," she said, winking. "You're going to have a lot more responsibility now." I didn't care. I was ready for it. This was what I'd been working for. With the raise and all the freelance gigs I'd been stacking up, I was finally in a place where I could start thinking about my next move. Literally. I wasn't going to stay in Hannah's guest room forever, and now I could actually start looking for a place of my own. But the thing was, it wasn't just about the money or the job. It was about finally feeling like I was in control of my life again. For so long, I'd felt stuck. Stuck in that house with my family, stuck in their expectations of me, stuck in their judgment. But now I was free. I was making my own decisions, building my own life, and no one could take that away from me. I was finally moving forward, and it felt damn good. A few weeks after I got promoted to lead designer, I was finally starting to feel like I had my life together. I'd been working nonstop, saving money, and I was even thinking about getting my own place soon. Things were really looking up for me. But of course, right when you think everything is going smoothly, life decides to throw a wrench in the gears. It started one random Wednesday afternoon. I was in the middle of working on this big project when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it, just figured it was an email or something. But when I glanced at the screen, I saw the name I least expected. Tom. My brother. The last person I wanted to hear from. For a second, I just stared at the phone. Part of me didn't want to answer it. I hadn't heard from Tom or my parents since they kicked me out on my birthday, and honestly, I didn't miss them. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Robin, it's me," Tom replied, his voice quieter than usual. It wasn't his usual cocky tone, which threw me off. "I know it's you," I said, a little annoyed. "What do you want?" There was this long pause on the other end, and for a moment I thought he'd hung up. But then he spoke again, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I need help." I raised an eyebrow, not believing what I was hearing. Tom? Needing help from me? The same brother who stood there and watched while my stuff was thrown out onto the front lawn? "Yeah, right. I don't know what to tell you," I replied, already feeling the anger bubbling up inside me. "You made it pretty clear I'm not part of the family anymore." He let out a sigh. "Look, I know things have been rough, but this isn't about that. It's about Dad. He lost his job, and Mom's spending is out of control. I can't afford school anymore." There it was, the real reason for the call. It wasn't about me or making amends or even caring about what happened. It was about money. It was always about money. I bit my lip, fighting back the wave of emotions that hit me. Part of me wanted to tell him off, to remind him how they treated me, to hang up and never look back. But another part of me, a small stupid part, still felt that pull of obligation. They were my family after all. Or at least, they used to be. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You're calling me now, after months of silence, because you need money? It's not just about the money, Tom said quickly. We're in a bad spot, Robin. You know how Mom is? She's been spending like crazy, and Dad? Well, he's not exactly doing great without a job. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. That sounds like a you problem, Tom, not mine. Come on, Robin. We're family, he said, and I could practically hear the desperation in his voice. It was the first time in years he'd sounded vulnerable, but I wasn't falling for it. Family? I scoffed, unable to stop the bitterness from seeping into my tone. You guys threw me out on my birthday. Family doesn't do that. He didn't have an answer for that, just a long pause. And honestly, that silence told me everything I needed to know. I'm done being your backup plan, I said, my voice firm. You and Mom and Dad made it pretty clear where I stand with you all. Don't call me again. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly as I set the phone down on my desk. I felt this strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. It felt good to stand up for myself, to finally put my foot down and say no. But at the same time, it sucked that it had come to this. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to process everything. I kept thinking about all the times I'd bent over backward for my family, all the times I'd sacrificed my own happiness for theirs. And where had it gotten me? Homeless on my birthday. It was time to stop feeling guilty for walking away. They made their choice, and I had made mine. After that call, I threw myself back into work. I didn't want to dwell on it too long because I knew it would just drag me down. So I focused on the project I was working on, trying to push the thoughts of Tom and my parents to the back of my mind. But the thing is, once those thoughts creep in, they're hard to get rid of. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I kept thinking about what I could have said, what I should have said. I wanted to believe that maybe, deep down, they were sorry. But I knew better. They weren't calling because they missed me or because they regretted what they did. They were calling because they needed something from me, and I wasn't about to let them use me again. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. It was time to focus on me, on building my life, my career, and my future. I couldn't keep looking back. Couldn't keep wondering if things could have been different. They weren't. And that was just the reality of it. From that day forward, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let my family drag me down anymore. I'd been through enough, and I was finally in a place where I was starting to build something good for myself. I wasn't about to let them ruin that. Sure, part of me still felt guilty for cutting them off, for not helping when they were clearly in a tough spot. But then I reminded myself, where were they when I was struggling? Where were they when I needed help? Yeah, I didn't owe them anything. So I kept going. I worked hard, saved my money, and kept my focus on the future. And every time I started to feel that old guilt creeping in, I reminded myself of that phone call. They made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. And honestly, it felt good to finally be free. I finally saved up enough to buy a really nice apartment, and it's honestly the best thing that's happened to me. I was in the middle of a project, knee-deep in designs and completely focused, when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it might be a package or something. I'd been ordering a bunch of stuff for work, so I didn't think twice about it. But when I checked the security camera, I froze. There, standing on my porch, were my parents. And Tom. My stomach did this weird flip, and I felt like someone had punched me. They hadn't reached out since that call from Tom weeks ago. I thought we were done. So why the hell were they here? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down before opening the door. My mind was racing with all the possible reasons they could be standing there. Maybe they were here to apologize, or maybe they just needed something else. Honestly, I didn't know which would be worse. When I opened the door, my mom, Susan, didn't even wait for me to say anything. She pushed past me like she owned the place, her eyes scanning my living room like she was appraising it. "Wow, Robin, you've really done well for yourself," she said, this weird smile on her face, the kind that wasn't really a smile at all. I just stood there, stunned. Tom followed her in, looking uncomfortable, while my dad, Mark, shuffled in last, his hands stuffed in his pockets like he had no idea what to do with himself. What are you guys doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding and I could feel this tension building up inside me. I knew this wasn't going to be a good conversation, but I was hoping, maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Mom turned around, that fake smile still plastered on her face. We're here to talk about living arrangements. I blinked, confused. What? Dad cleared his throat, and for the first time since they'd arrived, he spoke. We think it's time for the family to be back together. I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so ridiculous that for a second I thought they were joking. You're joking, right? I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. Mom's smile faded and she crossed her arms, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. No, Robin, we've talked it over and we think it's time we all live together again, as a family. I stared at her, speechless. This had to be some kind of prank. After everything that's happened? After you kicked me out on my birthday and now you want to move in with me? Tom, who had been silent until now, chimed in with his usual smug tone. Come on, Robin, don't be so dramatic. That's all in the past. I felt my blood boil. All in the past? You guys threw me out on my birthday? You left me with nowhere to go, no support, nothing? And now you want to just waltz back into my life like nothing happened? Mom's expression hardened. We gave you the push you needed, she said, her voice cold. And look how well you've done because of it. You should be thanking us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were trying to take credit for my success? For everything I'd worked my ass off for? So what? You think you can just show up, claim credit for my hard work and what? Move in here? This is my home, not yours. Dad, trying to play the peacemaker, stepped forward. Robin, be reasonable. We're struggling right now. You have all this space and we thought it'd be nice to be together again. I shook my head, my frustration building with every word they said. You're only here because you need something. You didn't care about me when I was struggling, and now you expect me to help you? That's not how this works. Mom's face twisted with anger. We're your family, Robin. We sacrificed for you. Everything you have is because of us. I couldn't hold back anymore. Sacrificed? What exactly did you sacrifice, Mom? You kicked me out. You didn't help me when I needed it most. You threw me away like I was nothing. And now you think you're entitled to my success? To my home? She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. I've worked hard for this. I've built this life for myself with no help from you. You don't get to walk in here and claim anything. Tom rolled his eyes. God, Robin, stop being so selfish. We're just asking for a little help. That word, selfish, set me off. Selfish? I snapped. You want to talk about selfish? How about you all throwing me out of the house, leaving me with nothing? How about showing up here now, demanding that I give you a place to stay because you've screwed up your own lives? That's selfish, Tom, not me. Dad stepped forward again, his voice softer, almost pleading. Robin, please. We're just asking for a chance. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to use me anymore. Mom's eyes narrowed. Fine. If you want to be difficult, we'll take legal action. We have rights, you know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Legal action? On what grounds? We'll find something, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Don't push me, Robin. I let out a bitter laugh. Go ahead, try. But let me tell you something. This is my house and you have no right to it. You're not moving in. Not now, not ever. They didn't say anything for a moment. I could see the anger and frustration building in their faces, but I didn't care. I wasn't backing down. Finally, I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. Get out, I said, my voice steady. Now. They hesitated for a moment, but I stood firm, waiting for them to leave. Mom huffed, shooting me a look full of hatred before marching out. Dad followed her, looking like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. And then Tom, who just shook his head in disbelief, walked out without another word. As soon as they were gone, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My heart was still racing, and my hands were shaking, but I felt this weird sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. Not now. Not ever. After I kicked my family out of my house, things got quiet again. I'm not going to lie, it was a relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life, like I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end of it. My mom had thrown out that threat about legal action, and even though I didn't think she had anything to stand on, I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done trying to weasel their way back into my life. A few days later, I got a call from Mike. He's one of my closest friends, and lucky for me, he's also a lawyer. I had mentioned the whole situation to him in passing, but I hadn't gone into all the details. Now that my family had crossed the line, I figured it was time to get some real advice. Hey, Robin, Mike said when I answered. You free to talk? I've been thinking about your situation. Yeah, sure, I replied, suddenly feeling a bit anxious. What's up? I've been looking into your parents' situation a bit more, he said, his tone getting more serious. I know you mentioned that they've been struggling financially and you're worried they might try something shady. Well, I did some digging and it turns out they're in deeper trouble than you thought. My heart sank. I didn't want to hear this, but I knew I needed to. What do you mean? I asked. There's a history of financial issues, Robin. Tax problems, debt. It's not just that your dad lost his job and your mom's been overspending. They've been digging themselves into a hole for years. And now that you've made it clear they can't rely on you, they're getting desperate. I sat there, processing what Mike was saying. My mind flashed back to my mom's smug threats, her talking about legal action, her entitlement to what I'd worked for. It made sense now. This wasn't just about needing help. They were trying to find a way out of their own mess, and they saw me as their way out. So, what do? I asked, feeling the familiar weight of stress settling on my shoulders. Mike was quiet for a second before answering. Well, first off, you need to protect yourself. They might not have much of a case to try and take anything from you, but people do stupid things when they're desperate. We should file for a restraining order to make sure they can't harass you anymore. You've got enough evidence of their behavior, those threats, them showing up at your house. It's time to take some legal steps. A restraining order. That sounded extreme, but at the same time, I knew it was the right move. My family had already shown they didn't respect my boundaries, and if they were desperate enough to keep pushing, I needed to protect myself. I'll do it, I said, feeling a sense of resolve. Let's file the restraining order. Mike talked me through the process, and within a few days we had everything in motion. It wasn't just about stopping them from coming to my house. It was about finally drawing the line. I wasn't going to let them drag me into their mess. I had worked too hard to get to where I was, and I wasn't about to let their issues derail my progress. As all of this was happening, I noticed something strange. I started getting weird messages from mutual acquaintances, people who knew my family but hadn't been in touch for a while. They were vague at first, but then it became clear. My parents were spreading lies about me. Apparently, I had abandoned them when they needed me most. I was selfish and ungrateful for not helping out after everything they'd done for me. It was laughable, really. The same people who kicked me out on my birthday were now trying to play the victim card. I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, it pissed me off. I had worked so hard to rebuild my life, and now they were trying to tear it down by turning people against me. I called Mike again, letting him know about the rumors. What should I do? I asked, frustration clear in my voice. Honestly, don't engage with it, he said. These people don't know the full story, and your parents are banking on the fact that you'll get defensive and try to explain yourself. Don't give them that satisfaction. We'll handle this in court if it gets that far, and trust me, you've got nothing to worry about. It wasn't easy taking Mike's advice. My first instinct was to blast the truth to anyone who would listen, to tell them how my family had treated me and why I had every right to cut them off. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Mike was right. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Weeks passed, and the legal proceedings moved forward. Mike was a beast in the courtroom, and when the restraining order was finalized, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. My family couldn't come near me, and if they tried to pull any more stunts, they'd be in serious legal trouble. But that wasn't the end of their problems. Remember those financial issues Mike had mentioned? Well, it turns out they were worse than we thought. After some more digging, Mike found out that my parents had been dodging taxes for years. They'd been hiding money, falsifying documents, and now the IRS was on their tail. It was almost poetic, watching the mess they had made for themselves unravel right in front of them. As much as I wanted to feel bad for them, I couldn't. They had brought this on themselves. They had made their choices, and now they had to deal with the consequences. I wasn't going to be their savior anymore. One day after everything had settled down, I sat in my living room, staring out the window and thinking about everything that had happened. It was strange feeling this sense of closure. I had spent so long feeling trapped by my family's expectations, by their manipulation and guilt trips, and now, for the first time, I felt free. Mike called later that night to check in. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm good," I said, and for the first time I actually meant it. "It's been a crazy ride, but I'm good." You did the right thing, Robin, Mike said. They made their choices, and you made yours. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. I smiled to myself. He was right. I had stood up for myself, and I wasn't going to feel guilty for it. For too long, I had let my family control how I felt, how I acted, and now I was finally in control of my own life. And that felt damn good. My family used me as a free babysitter for 10 years, then called me selfish when I got a full scholarship in another state, accusing me of abandoning the family. So I moved anyway. They disowned me, but 5 years later, they were calling and begging for help. My name is Alex, and if someone had told me 10 years ago that I'd be living across the country from my family, completely cut off from them, I would have laughed. Not because it seemed impossible, but because back then, I couldn't imagine a life where I wasn't constantly needed, constantly available, constantly responsible for everyone else's children. I was the middle child in a family of 5 kids. There was Jessica, 3 years older and floating through life without a care in the world. Below me were the twins, Maverick and Maya, age 8, and baby brother Tyler, just 5. My parents worked demanding jobs. Mom as a nurse pulling 12-hour shifts, Dad as a supervisor with unpredictable hours. Looking back, I can see how it started. It wasn't malicious, just convenient. Jessica had her mall job, her boyfriend, her social life. I was quiet, responsible, and apparently had nothing better to do than babysit whenever needed. Alex, can you keep an eye on the kids while I run to the store? Became, Alex, I'll be back in a few hours, which eventually became, Alex, you're in charge until we get home. No discussion, no asking if I had plans, just assumption. The first time I realized how deep I was in this hole was during junior year. I was in the library working on a college application essay when my phone buzzed. Alex, honey, I need you to pick up the twins. Mrs. Henderson called in sick, so there's no after-school care today. I looked at my half-finished essay. But Mom, I'm working on college stuff. Can't Jessica? Jessica has work. You know that. The twins are waiting. I packed up and drove to elementary school. The twins climbed into the back seat of the beat-up Honda my parents let me use for family emergencies, which apparently included any time they needed chauffeur service. That became the pattern. School, then immediately pick up kids, help with homework, make snacks, break up fights, coordinate baths, read bedtime stories. By the time my parents got home around 8 or 9, I was exhausted. Thanks, sweetie, Mom would say, heading upstairs. You're such a lifesaver. Dad would ruffle my hair. Don't know what we'd do without you, kiddo. No payment, no acknowledgement that I just worked a 6-hour nanny shift, no recognition that I might have had plans or homework or a life of my own. Meanwhile, Jessica saved money from retail for college, went to parties, dated guys, lived the normal teenage experience I was apparently too responsible to deserve. When I mentioned this, Mom just sighed. Jessica's different, Alex. She's not as mature as you are. We know we can count on you. Translation. Jessica gets to be young and irresponsible, but you're the dependable one, so you get to be an adult at 17. When Jessica left for college, there was no discussion about redistributing responsibilities. Just assumption I'd fill the gap. Senior year became a blur of missed opportunities. Couldn't join clubs, couldn't take SAT prep, couldn't go to homecoming because Tyler had flu and Mom was working doubles. There will be other dances, she said. Family comes first. I returned my dress clothes and bought groceries instead. My guidance counselor started pulling me aside. Your grades are good, but colleges want well-rounded applicants. I wanted to say I was well-rounded. I could change diapers, help with calculus, mediate fights, and cook for 5, all in one afternoon. But professional unpaid nanny probably wasn't what admissions committees wanted. One night, filling out applications for local schools, Tyler knocked on my door clutching his one-eyed stuffed elephant. Alex, I can't sleep. Can you read me a story? I looked at the application, then at his hopeful face. Sure, buddy. As I tucked him in and read Dr. Seuss for the 100th time, I realized something that made my chest tight. I loved these kids genuinely, deeply. But somewhere along the way, love had become obligation, and obligation had become a cage. The turning point came in February of my senior year. Jessica called home in tears. She'd failed 2 classes and been put on academic probation. She needed to come home to figure things out, which really meant move back into her old room and have Mom and Dad support her while she worked at the mall again. The day she returned, lugging suitcases and dorm decorations, I was making after-school snacks for the twins. She dumped her stuff in the living room and surveyed the house. God, this place is a mess, she said. What happened to keeping things clean? I gestured at Maverick building Legos and Maya doing homework surrounded by art supplies. Kids happened. Kids that someone has to watch. Jessica shrugged. Well, now that I'm back, maybe I can help out sometimes. Sometimes. The word hung in the air like a promise no one intended to keep. That weekend, Mom asked me to watch everyone while they took Jessica out to dinner to discuss her plans going forward. I spent Saturday evening doing homework help, mediating twin arguments and bedtime routines. They came home after 10, laughing about something Jessica had said. Oh, and Alex? Mom turned to me as she headed upstairs. Jessica needs the car tomorrow for job hunting. You'll have to figure out another way to get to school. I stared at her retreating figure. Jessica had been home 1 week, and already she was taking over the car I'd used for 2 years of kid shuttling. But apparently her job search trumped my transportation to school. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and Googled full scholarships out of state. Most deadlines had passed, but one caught my eye. The Morrison Foundation Scholarship for Students Demonstrating Exceptional Resilience. Deadline March 15th. It was February 28th. The essay prompt. Describe a challenge you've overcome and how it has prepared you for college success. I stared at the blank document, then started typing. For the past 3 years, I have been the primary caregiver for my 3 younger siblings, while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I wrote for 3 hours about missed opportunities and late-night homework sessions, about cooking on budgets and calming nightmares, about love and resentment, and the complicated space between being needed and being taken for granted. The Morrison Foundation offered full tuition, room, and board at 12 participating universities. I applied to all 12, even ones across the country I'd never seriously considered. Then I waited. March and April passed in standardized babysitting routines. Jessica helped with kids exactly twice. College rejections piled up. The local state university accepted me with partial scholarships. Nothing that would let me really leave. Then, on a Thursday in late April, I got the call. I was stirring mac and cheese while helping Maya with math homework when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Hi, is this Alex Mitchell? This is Dr. Jennifer Wells from the Morrison Foundation. I'm calling with wonderful news. I nearly dropped the wooden spoon. Maya looked up, sensing something important. You've been selected as one of this year's Morrison Scholars. Congratulations, Alex. Your essay was extraordinary. The kitchen tilted around me. What? Full scholarship to your first choice school, Portland State University in Oregon. 4 years. Full tuition, room, board, and a stipend for books. Oregon. 3,000 miles away. A place where no one knew me as the guy who babysat his siblings. You deserve it. Your resilience and maturity shone through every line. After I hung up, Maya tugged my shirt. Alex, who was that? You look funny. I got into college. I got a full scholarship to college. That evening, when my parents came home, I told them about the scholarship. I expected excitement, congratulations, maybe pride. Instead, I got confusion. Oregon? Mom said, as if I'd announced I was moving to Mars. But why Oregon? There are perfectly good schools here. It's a full scholarship, Mom. Full ride. Dad frowned. But what about the kids? Jessica's still getting back on her feet. We can't handle everything without you. I stared at him. I'm 18 years old, Dad. I'm supposed to go to college. Of course, Mom said quickly. We're just saying maybe somewhere closer. Somewhere you could come home on weekends. Somewhere I could still be on call for babysitting duty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The Morrison Foundation only gives out 20 scholarships nationwide each year. Jessica, scrolling through her phone, looked up. I think it's kind of selfish, honestly. The word hit like a slap. Selfish? You know Mom and Dad need help with the kids. You know I'm trying to get my life together. This feels like you're abandoning everyone because you got some fancy scholarship. Something cracked inside my chest. Abandoning? I've spent 3 years raising kids that aren't mine. I've missed school dances and SAT prep and normal teenage experiences because I was here being responsible for everyone else's children. How is finally doing something for myself abandoning anyone? We never forced you, Mom said, voice getting that lecturing edge. You're part of this family, and family members help each other. Help each other? When was the last time anyone helped me? We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head, Dad said. Everything you did was for Jessica and Maverick and Maya and Tyler. I was just the unpaid help. The room fell silent except Tyler playing with toys, oblivious to the tension. Finally, Mom spoke, voice cold. If that's how you feel, Alex, maybe you should go to Oregon. But don't expect us to pretend we're happy about you abandoning your family. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go to Oregon. And since I'm abandoning everyone anyway, I guess you'll figure out childcare on your own. I walked upstairs and closed the door. For the first time in years, I didn't check if anyone needed help with homework or bedtime stories. The next few weeks were Arctic. Mom spoke to me in clipped, cold sentences only when absolutely necessary. Dad tried to play peacemaker once or twice, suggesting that maybe I could compromise by choosing a school closer to home. But when I didn't budge, he gave up and joined the silent treatment. Jessica seemed almost gleeful about the whole situation. With me in disgrace, she suddenly looked like the good daughter by comparison. She even volunteered to help with the kids a few times, making sure Mom and Dad saw her reading to Tyler or helping Maya with her spelling words. "See?" I heard her tell Mom one evening. "I told you I could help out more." Alex always acted like he was the only one who could do anything around here. The twins, Maverick and Maya, were confused by the tension, but smart enough to stay out of it. Tyler, at 5, just knew that everyone seemed angry and that Alex wasn't reading him bedtime stories anymore. I spent those weeks preparing for my escape. I researched everything I could about Portland State, about Oregon, about being a college student 3,000 miles from home. I applied for a campus job and looked into student organizations I might want to join. I started buying things I'd need for my dorm room with money I'd saved from my part-time job at the local grocery store. 2 weeks before graduation, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Alex, this has gone on long enough. You're being ridiculous." I continued making my sandwich, not looking up. "I'm being ridiculous?" "Yes. This whole Oregon thing is a tantrum. You're upset about some imagined slight, and you're punishing all of us for it." I set down the knife I'd been using to spread peanut butter and finally looked at her. "Mom, in the past 3 years, how many school events of mine have you attended?" She blinked. "What does that have to do with anything?" "How many?" I've been to plenty of your events." "Name one." Silence. "I made honor roll every semester for 3 years. I was in the National Honor Society. I gave a speech at the academic awards ceremony. I was selected for the peer tutoring program. You missed all of it because you were working or because someone needed to watch the kids. Alex, you know how demanding my job is. You went to every single one of Jessica's volleyball games. You went to her homecoming dance pictures. You threw her a party when she got accepted to college, even though her grades were terrible." Mom's face flushed. "That's different." "How?" "Jessica needed more support. She wasn't as naturally responsible as you. So I got punished for being responsible by being given more responsibility. And Jessica got rewarded for being irresponsible by having her responsibilities taken care of for her. It's not punishment, Alex. It's family." "No, Mom. Family is when everyone contributes. Family is when parents take care of their children instead of making one child take care of the others. Family is when a teenager gets to be a teenager instead of being a built-in babysitter." I picked up my sandwich and headed toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Mom called after me. "To my room, to work on scholarship paperwork. You know, for the opportunity I'm being selfish about by accepting." Graduation day was awkward and tense. My parents came because not showing up would have looked bad to the other parents. But they sat stiffly through the ceremony and left immediately after, without suggesting we go out to celebrate. Jessica, who had been working at the mall that day, met us at home later. "How was graduation?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. "Fine," I said. "Cool." That was the extent of my family's acknowledgement of my high school graduation. 3 days later, Mom found me packing boxes in my room. "You're really doing this," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. We've decided that if you go to Oregon, you shouldn't expect to come back here for holidays or summers. If you want to abandon your family, then you're on your own." I looked up from the box of books I was packing. "Are you disowning me?" "We're not disowning you. We're just making it clear that if you choose to leave, you can't expect us to welcome you back when it's convenient for you." "So you're disowning me." Mom's mouth tightened. "Think of it however you want, Alex. But don't come crying to us when you realize how hard it is to make it on your own." The morning I left for Portland, only Tyler came downstairs to say goodbye. He was still in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed elephant. "Are you coming back?" he asked, his 5-year-old face serious. I knelt down to his level. "I don't know, buddy, but I'll miss you." He hugged me tight, and for a moment I almost changed my mind. Almost. But then I remembered that Tyler's hugs, as much as I loved them, weren't worth sacrificing my entire future. "Take care of yourself, okay? Be good for Mom and Dad." He nodded solemnly, like I'd given him an important mission. I loaded my car with everything I owned that mattered and drove away from the house where I'd spent 18 years being everyone's caretaker. In the rearview mirror, I could see Tyler standing in the doorway in his dinosaur pajamas, waving. Portland was everything I'd hoped and more. My dorm room was small, but mine. My roommate, Jake, was from California and had never heard of my family or my reputation as the responsible one. To him, I was just Alex, freshman psychology major with an interest in child development. The irony wasn't lost on me. For the first time in years, I had a schedule that was entirely my own. Classes, study time, meals when I wanted to eat them, sleep when I was actually tired instead of when the last child had been tucked into bed. I joined the psychology club and started volunteering at a local elementary school as a tutor. I made friends who knew me as the guy who was funny and smart and surprisingly good at beer pong, not as the guy who always had to leave early to babysit. I called home twice during my first semester. Both times, whoever answered was polite but distant. Yes, everyone was fine. Yes, they'd figured out arrangements for the kids. No, there wasn't really any news to share. I stopped calling. The Morrison Foundation Scholarship included a mentorship program, and I was paired with Dr. Patricia Harrison, a psychology professor who specialized in family dynamics and child development. During our monthly coffee meetings, she helped me process not just my academic goals, but also the complicated feelings I had about my family. It's normal to feel guilty, she told me during one of our sessions. You were parentified as a child, forced to take on adult responsibilities before you were ready. When parentified children finally set boundaries, they often struggle with feelings of guilt and abandonment, even though they're the ones who were originally abandoned by their parents. But I did abandon them, I said. The kids needed help, and I left. The kids needed their parents to figure out appropriate childcare, not to continue relying on their older son to sacrifice his future. You modeled something important for them, that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being, and that adults should be responsible for their own choices. It took 2 years of therapy and countless conversations with Dr. Harrison before I really understood that leaving hadn't been selfish. It had been survival. By my junior year, I was thriving. I had a 3.9 GPA, a part-time job as a research assistant, and a girlfriend named Emma who thought my stories about growing up were heartbreaking, not normal. I was applying for graduate school programs in child psychology, inspired by my own experiences, but finally able to see them from a professional rather than personal perspective. I had built a life in Portland. I had friends, professors who knew my name and my potential, internship opportunities, a sense of myself as an individual rather than just an extension of my family's needs. For the first time in my life, I was happy. And then, on a Tuesday evening in October of my junior year, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me pick up. Hello? Alex? It's Jessica. I sat down on my dorm room bed. I hadn't talked to my sister in over 2 years. Hi, I said carefully. Hi. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? There was a pause. I'm pregnant. I waited for her to continue. And I'm not with the father anymore. And I'm living at home with mom and dad. And her voice broke. Alex, I don't know how you did it. I can't handle the twins and Tyler and everything. And now I'm going to have a baby. And I don't know what to do. The irony was breathtaking. Jessica, who had called me selfish for leaving, was now discovering exactly how much work I'd been doing all those years. Have you talked to mom and dad about getting help? I asked. They're working even more hours now. Dad got laid off last year and had to take a job at a different plant with worse pay, so mom picked up extra shifts. They're barely home, and when they are, they're exhausted. What about professional childcare? Jessica laughed, but it sounded more like crying. With what money? Do you know how much daycare costs for 3 kids? Even if we could find someone to take Tyler after school and watch the twins all summer, we can't afford it. I felt an old, familiar tug of guilt and responsibility. These were still my siblings she was talking about. Tyler was 7 now, the twins were 10. They were kids, and they needed someone to take care of them. But then I thought about Dr. Harrison, about all our conversations about boundaries and enabling and the difference between helping and fixing. I thought about my life in Portland, about graduate school applications sitting on my desk, about the research project I was working on that could lead to publication. Jessica, I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't come back. I'm not asking you to come back permanently, she said quickly. Just for a while. Just until I figure things out. Just until the baby comes and I can get back on my feet. And then what? You'll be a single mother with 4 kids to take care of instead of 3. How is that going to be easier? Alex, please, I'm desperate. I was wrong before. I know I was wrong. You weren't selfish. I get it now. I'm sorry. The apology I'd wanted to hear for years. But it was coming at the worst possible time, for the wrong reasons. Jessica, me coming back won't solve the problem. It will just enable everyone to avoid solving it themselves. Mom and Dad need to figure out sustainable childcare arrangements. You need to figure out your situation with the baby. The twins and Tyler need stability that doesn't depend on whether or not I'm available to provide it. So you're just going to let your family fall apart? There it was. The manipulation I'd been expecting. My family's problems were my responsibility, even from 3,000 miles away. My family fell apart years ago, I said quietly, when parents decided that one child's future was less important than their convenience. When you called me selfish for accepting an opportunity that could change my entire life. When I was disowned for refusing to sacrifice my education to be your permanent babysitter. Jessica was crying now. Alex, please, I know we messed up, but we need you. You need help. You don't need me specifically. There are resources, Jessica. Look into state programs for single mothers. Look into sliding scale childcare. Look into family support services. But don't call me asking to resume a role that nearly destroyed me. I don't know how to do any of that. Then learn. The same way I learned how to take care of 3 kids when I was barely older than Maverick and Maya are now. The same way I learned to fill out college applications while working essentially full-time as a nanny. The same way I learned to build a life for myself without any support from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. After I hung up, I sat in my dorm room for a long time. My roommate was at his girlfriend's place, so I had the space to myself to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to buy a plane ticket home, the part that had been trained from childhood to fix everyone else's problems, to sacrifice my own needs for the greater good of the family. But a larger part of me, the part that had grown stronger over the past 3 years, knew that going back would solve nothing and cost me everything. I called Dr. Harrison instead. Alex, she said, her voice warm with concern when I told her about Jessica's call. How are you feeling? Guilty and angry and relieved, I think. Relieved? That I'm not there. That it's not my problem to solve this time. That's growth, she said. Recognizing that you can care about people without being responsible for their problems. Over the next few months, the calls continued. First from Jessica, then from Mom, then from Dad. Always the same theme. Things were hard, they needed help. Couldn't I just come back for a little while? The guilt was crushing sometimes. I'd lie awake at night wondering if Tyler was doing okay in school, if the twins were getting help with homework, if Jessica was taking care of herself during her pregnancy. But I held firm to my boundaries. In December, Jessica had the baby, a little girl named Emma. Mom sent me a single text with a photo. She's beautiful. We're all doing fine. I looked at the picture of my niece, a tiny, red-faced infant with dark hair, and felt a complex mix of emotions. Love, because she was family, and she was innocent in all of this. Sadness, because I was missing her first moments. Relief, because her existence wasn't my responsibility. I sent back a simple response. Congratulations, she's lovely. That was the last direct communication I had with my family for almost 2 years. I graduated summa cum laude with my bachelor's degree in psychology. I was accepted to graduate school at the University of Washington for a PhD program in developmental psychology with a focus on family systems and child welfare. I moved to Seattle, found a small apartment, and threw myself into my research. My dissertation was on the long-term effects of parentification on childhood development. I interviewed dozens of young adults who had been forced to take on parental responsibilities as children, documenting the impact on their academic achievement, mental health, and relationship patterns. It was personal work disguised as academic research, and it was the most meaningful thing I'd ever done. Through my research, I connected with other people who had similar experiences. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was part of a pattern that was more common than most people realized, and I was helping to document it and find ways to heal from it. 5 years after leaving for Portland, 6 months after defending my dissertation, I was working as a postdoctoral researcher at Seattle Children's Hospital when my phone rang on a Wednesday afternoon. Another unknown number, but this time from my home area code. I answered without thinking. Alex? Oh, thank God. It's Dad. I hadn't heard my father's voice in years. He sounded older, tired. Hi, Dad. Alex, we need to talk. Are you free? I was in the middle of analyzing data from a study on trauma-informed childcare practices, but something in his voice made me pause. I can talk for a few minutes. What's going on? It's your mother. She had a stroke last month. She's not doing well, Alex. She's in a rehabilitation facility, but the costs, and someone needs to coordinate her care. And Jessica's overwhelmed with the baby, and Tyler's having problems at school, and he was rambling, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for weeks. Dad, slow down. How bad was the stroke? She lost some mobility on her left side. Her speech is affected. She's going to need ongoing therapy and probably long-term care assistance. I'm sorry. That must be really difficult. There was a pause. Alex, I know we haven't talked in a long time. I know things ended badly between us, but we need help. Jessica can't manage everything, and I'm working 2 jobs just to keep up with the medical bills. The twins are in middle school now, and Tyler's struggling, and what are you asking me, Dad? Could you come home? Just for a while, just to help us figure out what to do. The old familiar request. The old familiar assumption that my life was pausable, that my priorities were secondary, that my value to the family was as a fixer of problems I hadn't created. But this time was different. This time I had 5 years of distance, a PhD, a career, and most importantly, a clear sense of who I was beyond my family role. Dad, I'm sorry about Mom. I really am. And I'm sorry you're all struggling. But I can't come back. Alex, please. I know we made mistakes. You disowned me. Mom told me I was selfish for accepting a full scholarship to college. None of you spoke to me for 5 years. You don't get to call me now and ask me to fix problems that were building long before Mom's stroke. That's not... We didn't disown you. We were hurt that you left. You were hurt that I stopped being your free childcare. Silence. Dad, I love you. I love Mom. I love all my siblings. But loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your life for them, especially when they've made it clear that your life doesn't matter to them. Your life does matter to us. Then why didn't it matter 5 years ago? Why didn't anyone care that I was missing out on normal teenage experiences to be a full-time babysitter? Why didn't anyone care that I was passing up local colleges to get an opportunity that could change my entire future? Why didn't anyone support me when I finally tried to build something for myself? We were scared. We didn't know how we'd manage without you. It was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years. Dad, that was your problem to solve, not mine. I was a kid. Kids shouldn't have to manage their parents' inability to handle their responsibilities. We know that now. Jessica told us. She told us how hard it was. She couldn't do it, even for a few months. She said she doesn't know how you managed for years. I felt a flicker of validation, followed immediately by sadness. It had taken my family 5 years and a crisis to recognize what I'd been trying to tell them all along. I'm glad Jessica understands now. But Dad, I can't fix this. I have a life here. I have a career, research commitments, responsibilities of my own. I can't just drop everything and come back to being the family problem solver. What are we supposed to do? What millions of families do when they face medical crises? You research resources. You contact social services. You look into respite care and home health aides. You figure out sustainable solutions that don't depend on one person sacrificing their life. We don't know how to do that. Then you learn. The same way I learned to take care of kids when I was 17. The same way I learned to navigate college applications and scholarships and building a career without any support from my family. After I hung up, I sat in my office at the hospital for a long time. Through the window, I could see parents bringing their children for appointments, worried faces and hopeful faces and tired faces, all of them trying to do their best for their kids within whatever circumstances they were facing. I thought about my research, about all the families I'd studied who had found ways to heal from patterns of dysfunction and create healthier dynamics. It was possible, but it required everyone involved to be willing to change, to give up old roles and learn new ways of relating. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Dad said you won't come home. I understand why, but could we at least talk? I stared at the message for a while, then typed back, I'm willing to talk, but not about me coming home. If you want to discuss resources for Mom's care or childcare options, I can help research those things. Her response came quickly. That would help. I'm drowning, Alex. I never realized how much you did. Over the next few weeks, Jessica and I had several long phone conversations. Not about me returning, but about practical solutions to the family's problems. I helped her research state programs for families dealing with medical crises. I found information about sliding scale childcare, after-school programs, and respite care services. I even connected them with social workers who specialized in helping families navigate complex care situations. Slowly, my family began to figure out a sustainable system. Mom moved from the rehabilitation facility to a smaller care facility closer to home. Dad reduced his hours at one of his jobs to help coordinate her care and spend time with the younger kids. Jessica found a part-time job with flexible hours and enrolled Emma in a daycare that offered sliding scale fees. It wasn't easy for them, and it wasn't perfect, but it was working. And most importantly, it wasn't dependent on me sacrificing my life. 6 months after Dad's call, Mom was able to come home with the assistance of a part-time aide. Her speech had improved significantly, And while she still had mobility challenges, she was stable. Tyler was doing better in school with the help of a tutor and more consistent support at home. The twins had adjusted to their new routines. Jessica called me on a Saturday evening in spring. "How's everyone doing?" I asked. "Better," she said. "Really better. Mom's getting stronger every week. Tyler made honor roll this semester. Maverick and Maya are both playing soccer now." "That's wonderful." "Alex, I owe you an apology. A real one." I waited. "When you left for college, I was jealous. I was jealous that you got this amazing opportunity, and I was stuck at home dealing with my failures. And I was terrified because I knew that once you were gone, I'd have to step up and I didn't think I could do it." "Jessica." "No, let me finish. I called you selfish because it was easier than admitting that I was the selfish one. I had been letting you carry all the responsibility while I got to be the irresponsible older sister. When you left, I realized how much work you'd been doing, how much you'd been sacrificing." She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "I tried to take over for a few months when I got pregnant, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle what you'd been handling since you were 15 years old. And instead of recognizing that you were amazing, I was resentful that you weren't there to keep doing it." "Thank you for saying that," I said softly. "I'm proud of you. I know I should have said that years ago, but I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and for building something incredible with your life. And I'm sorry it took me so long to understand." We talked for another hour. Really talked, for the first time in our adult lives. She told me about her struggles with single motherhood, her fears about being a good parent, her appreciation for all the things I'd taught her during our childhood that she'd never acknowledged before. I told her about my research, my career goals, my life in Seattle. As we were wrapping up the call, she said, "Would it be okay if I visited sometime? I'd love to see your life there, and I'd love for Emma to know her uncle." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. A few weeks later, I got a card in the mail. It was from Tyler, now 12 years old, written in careful cursive handwriting that reminded me of helping him with his letters when he was 5. "Dear Alex, Dad told me you helped find the programs that let Mom come home. Thank you for helping, even though we were mean to you. I miss you, and I hope I can see you soon. I still have the elephant you fixed. Love, Tyler." Love for the little boy who had hugged me goodbye in his dinosaur pajamas. Grief for all the years we'd lost. Relief that we might be able to build something new. I have relationships with my family members now, but they're relationships based on choice and mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt. Jessica visits me once a year with Emma, who is a bright, energetic 5-year-old who calls me Uncle Alex and loves the Science Museum. Tyler and I text regularly, and I've been able to help him with college applications and scholarship essays. The twins are teenagers now, busy with sports and school activities, but they send me updates about their lives. Mom and I have video calls every few weeks. Her speech has almost completely returned, and while we've never had a deep conversation about the past, she tells me she's proud of what I've accomplished. Dad and I exchange emails about family updates and my work. It's not the close-knit family relationship that some people have, but it's honest. It's built on recognition of who we all really are rather than who we were forced to be by circumstance and dysfunction.